The nurse was already carrying a cardboard box filled with her belongings when the federal agents walked through the emergency room doors. Olivia Carter didn't stop walking. She had just been suspended. Her hospital badge was gone. Her access codes had been disabled. And after 3 years of being ignored, talked over, and blamed for asking difficult questions, she had no intention of looking back. But then she heard the commotion. 4 armed federal agents entered Blue Ridge Regional Hospital and surrounded a trauma bay. Doctors stopped talking. Nurses froze in place. Even the hospital administrator who had ordered Olivia's suspension only hours earlier suddenly looked nervous. Then something even stranger happened. One of the agents scanned the room, looked past every doctor, every surgeon, every administrator, and pointed directly at Olivia. "Where is Olivia Carter?" The room went silent. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. She had never met these men. She had never worked with the federal government. And she had absolutely no idea why armed agents would be looking for her. Then the ambulance doors burst open. A badly wounded man was rushed inside. Multiple gunshot wounds. Barely alive. Blood soaked through the sheets covering his body. The trauma team rushed into action. But before anyone could begin treatment, the wounded man opened his eyes for a brief second. And with what little strength he had left, he whispered a single name. Olivia. Not doctor. Not surgeon. Not chief of emergency medicine. Olivia. The nurse who had just been suspended. The nurse everyone in the building had spent years telling to stay quiet. What nobody knew was that Olivia Carter had been hiding a secret for a very long time. A secret buried deep in a past she had desperately tried to leave behind. A past connected to military operations, classified missions, and skills that no one inside this hospital knew she possessed. But Olivia's hidden past was only part of the story. Because while a wounded federal operative fought for his life inside the emergency room, investigators were uncovering something far more dangerous hidden inside the hospital itself. Altered medical records, silenced nurses, disappearing evidence, and a corruption scheme that had remained invisible for years. What happened that night would expose the truth, destroy powerful careers, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is not the one carrying a weapon. It's the one carrying the truth. Rain pressed softly against Lexington that afternoon, turning the hospital windows gray and blurring the parking lot lights into pale golden halos. Blue Ridge Regional Hospital stood on the eastern edge of Lexington, Kentucky, a 12-story building of brick, glass, and quiet ambition. To the public, it was a place of healing. To the people who worked inside it, it was something more complicated. It was a place where lives were saved, mistakes were buried, and silence often walked the hallways wearing polished shoes. Olivia Carter had learned that truth slowly, not in one dramatic revelation, but in small daily cuts that accumulated until they became a scar. She was 32 years old, 5'6", with warm brown skin, steady hazel eyes, and dark chestnut hair usually pinned into a practical bun that never survived an entire shift. There was nothing flashy about her. She wore plain white nursing shoes, kept 2 pins in her left pocket, and spoke in a calm voice that made frightened patients breathe a little easier. People often mistook her quietness for uncertainty. That was their first mistake. Olivia had built her quietness the way soldiers built shelters in bad weather, not because she was weak, but because she had learned that noise attracted fire. She had been at Blue Ridge Regional for 3 years, long enough to know which elevator stuck on the 4th floor, which surgeon smiled only when donors were visiting, and which administrator could turn a patient tragedy into a language problem on a report. She had also learned the unofficial rule that governed the emergency department. Doctors decided, nurses noticed, and the hospital preferred it when nurses noticed silently. Olivia had not always been silent, but every time she spoke up, someone reminded her of her place. Not directly at first. It came wrapped in phrases like chain of command, scope of practice, and team cohesion. Later, when her warnings made people uncomfortable, the phrases became sharper. You are overstepping. You are creating friction. You are not seeing the full picture. Those words followed her through the hallways like little ghosts with clipboards. Blue Ridge Regional had a way of making every nurse feel replaceable. The emergency department was always too full, always too loud, always running behind some invisible clock that administrators pretended was a quality metric. The monitors beeped like impatient birds. The air smelled of antiseptic, coffee, plastic gloves, and fear. On a normal shift, Olivia moved through it with disciplined grace. She checked vitals, comforted families, corrected medication orders before they became errors, and wrote notes so precise that anyone reading them could reconstruct a patient's condition minute by minute. Documentation was her shield. She had learned that if powerful people refused to hear a warning, they might still fear a written record of it. That afternoon, Olivia was restocking for tubing near Bay 3 when Monica Reed stepped up beside her. Monica was the charge nurse on duty, 47 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight braid and a face that could stop a reckless intern faster than a locked medication cabinet. She had worked at Blue Ridge Regional for nearly 15 years, and she carried the hospital's history in her eyes. Monica was not warm in the easy way some nurses were warm. Her kindness came like strong medicine, necessary, bitter at times, and usually correct. She glanced toward the physician station and lowered her voice. "Harper is already in one of his moods," she said. Olivia did not look up from the supply drawer. "He has other moods?" Monica's mouth twitched. "Don't make me laugh. I'm too tired to enjoy it." For a moment, the two women shared the fragile humor of people who worked too close to suffering and needed tiny absurdities to remain human. Dr. Stephen Harper stood at the center of the emergency department like a man who believed the room had been built around him. He was 46, tall, clean-shaven, with sharp cheekbones, pale blue eyes, and dark blonde hair combed back so neatly it seemed incapable of moving even in a storm. He had the polished confidence of a physician who had been praised early, promoted quickly, and challenged rarely. To patients, he could be charming. To administrators, he was efficient. To nurses, especially nurses who questioned him, he was winter in a white coat. Harper did not shout often. He did not need to. He had mastered a quieter cruelty, the kind that entered a room through lowered eyelids, and a tone so calm it left no fingerprints. Olivia had seen him correct nurses in front of families, dismiss concerns without reading notes, and praised teamwork only when everyone agreed with him. Olivia was checking the crash cart seal when the triage doors opened, and a grandmother rushed in carrying a child whose face had the strange stillness of serious illness. The little girl was small, 7 years old, wrapped in a lavender jacket too cheerful for the way her body sagged against the woman holding her. Her hair was pale brown and damp with sweat, stuck to her forehead in thin curls. Her eyes were open but unfocused, greenish-gray and glassy, as if she were looking at something far beyond the fluorescent lights. The grandmother, Elaine Mitchell, was in her early 70s, narrow and trembling, with white hair tucked beneath a knitted blue hat and hands that looked too delicate to hold so much fear. "Please," she said to the intake clerk. "Her fever won't come down. She was fine this morning. She was laughing this morning." Olivia heard the words before anyone called her name. She stepped away from the cart and moved toward Triage. "I've got her," she said. The intake clerk looked relieved. Olivia guided Elaine and the child into the assessment room and lowered her voice. "What's her name?" "Sophie," Elaine said. "Sophie Mitchell. She's 7. Olivia crouched so she was level with the child's face. "Hi, Sophie. I'm Olivia. I'm going to help you, sweetheart." Sophie did not answer. Her breathing was fast, shallow, and too controlled for a simple fever. Olivia placed a hand gently against the girl's forehead. Heat burned through her skin. The thermometer confirmed it, 103.7. Her pulse was rapid. Blood pressure borderline low. Oxygen acceptable, but trending in the wrong emotional direction, if such a thing could be said of numbers. Olivia lifted the sleeve of Sophie's jacket, expecting perhaps a viral rash, maybe hives, maybe the ordinary red bloom of childhood illness. What she saw made the room narrow around her. The rash was not ordinary. It was made of tiny dark red and purple dots scattered across Sophie's arms and beginning at the side of her neck. Petechiae. Olivia pressed a clear plastic medication cup gently against the skin. The marks did not blanch. They remained stubbornly dark beneath pressure, like little warnings written under the surface. A cold line ran through Olivia's chest. She had felt that cold line before in emergencies, the body's ancient alarm bell ringing before the mind had finished building the sentence. Fever. Non-blanching rash. Sudden decline. A child who had been fine at breakfast and dangerously ill by afternoon. Meningococcal septicemia had no patience for hierarchy. It did not wait for committees, egos, or lab results to feel respected. It moved like a thief through the bloodstream, stealing minutes and calling them hours. Olivia kept her voice steady. Elaine, has Sophie complained of neck pain? Headache? Light hurting her eyes? Elaine nodded quickly. She said the kitchen light was too bright. Then she said her legs hurt. I thought it was the flu. I thought. Her voice broke. Olivia placed a hand over hers for half a second, just long enough to anchor her. You brought her in. That was the right thing. Then Olivia turned toward the door and called, I need Dr. Harper in triage now. Monica, who had been passing the hallway, heard the tone and immediately looked over. Nurses recognized tones the way sailors recognized wind. Olivia did not sound frightened. She sounded certain, and certainty in a pediatric case was enough to move Monica fast. Dr. Harper arrived with a tablet in one hand and irritation already arranged on his face. What do we have? Olivia handed him the triage notes. 7-year-old female, high fever, sudden onset, lethargy, non-blanching petechial rash on upper extremities and neck. Blood pressure is soft. I'm concerned about meningococcal septicemia. She needs immediate antibiotics, blood cultures if we can get them fast, but ceftriaxone should not wait. Harper looked at the child, then at the rash, then back at the tablet. His eyes did not sharpen. That was what frightened Olivia most. Could be viral, he said. Could be an allergic presentation with fever from another source. Let's not dramatize it. Olivia felt something inside her go very still. With respect, the rash is non-blanching. I heard you. And she is declining quickly. We'll run labs. Labs take time she may not have. Harper's gaze lifted. It was the look he used when a nurse had stepped too close to the invisible throne. Olivia, I need you to start in 4, draw blood, and let me practice medicine. Elaine Mitchell watched them both with the terrible alertness of a grandmother trying to understand which adult in the room was telling the truth. Sophie made a small sound from the bed, not quite a cry, more like a breath that had lost its way. Olivia looked at the child and saw not a case, not a chart, but a little girl whose stuffed animal probably had a name, whose grandmother probably kept snacks in her purse, whose life was being measured in minutes by people arguing over authority. Olivia had spent years making herself smaller to survive this hospital. But there are moments when survival becomes a poor god. There are moments when silence asks for a sacrifice and points to someone innocent. Dr. Harper, Olivia said, slowly now, each word chosen like a stone placed in a river crossing. I am formally requesting that we treat this as suspected meningococcal septicemia and administer ceftriaxone immediately. Harper's jaw tightened. Request noted. I need it documented. The room changed. Monica, standing near the doorway, stopped moving. Harper lowered the tablet. Excuse me. Olivia kept her eyes on him. I am documenting a formal clinical disagreement with the current plan to wait for labs before initiating antibiotics. Harper gave a small laugh with no humor in it. You are not serious. I am very serious. You are a nurse. Yes. Then act like one. The words landed with the familiar blunt force, but this time they did not fold her inward. Instead, they seemed to clear something. Olivia remembered every patient whose warning sign had been softened in a note, every nurse who had learned to swallow concern, every family member who had trusted the white coats because hospitals looked holy from the outside. A hospital could resemble a temple when viewed from the parking lot. Inside, sometimes it had idols. Harper stepped closer and lowered his voice. You are making a scene in front of a family member. Olivia looked at Elaine, whose eyes were wet and fixed on Sophie. No, Olivia said. The disease is making the scene. I am trying to stop it. For 1 second, Harper looked truly angry, not polished angry, not professional angry, but personally offended. Then he turned sharply and walked out. Olivia knew where he was going before Monica said it. He's calling Bennett. Richard Bennett, the hospital administrator, was 54, silver-haired, handsome in a careful corporate way, with smooth skin, expensive suits, and the soft hands of a man who had never pushed a gurney at 3 in the morning. Bennett treated the hospital like a kingdom of numbers. He spoke often about community trust, patient satisfaction, and operational excellence, but his eyes always brightened most around funding, liability, and reputation management. He was not loud. Men like Bennett did not need to be loud. They had policies to do their shouting for them. Olivia returned to Sophie's bedside. She started the 4 with gentle precision, speaking softly to the child, even though Sophie barely responded. "You're doing so well, sweetheart. Brave girl. Just a little pinch." Elaine stood near the wall, twisting a tissue until it shredded between her fingers. "Do you think she'll be all right?" The question was a blade disguised as a whisper. Olivia could not lie. She also could not take away hope. "I think she needs treatment quickly," she said. "And I am doing everything I can to make sure she gets it." Elaine nodded, but her face crumpled slightly, as if she understood all the words Olivia had not said. 20 minutes later, Richard Bennett arrived in the emergency department with Dr. Harper at his side. Bennett wore a charcoal suit and a burgundy tie, perfectly knotted. Rain dotted the shoulders of his coat, but he had already brushed most of it away, as if even weather should know better than to cling to him. His expression was not angry. It was worse. It was disappointed in the way powerful men become disappointed when someone beneath them creates paperwork. "Olivia," he said, using her first name with artificial warmth. "May we speak privately?" Olivia did not move. "My patient needs antibiotics." Bennett glanced toward Sophie, then back to Olivia. "Dr. Harper is managing the case. Dr. Harper is waiting for labs. That is a clinical decision. It is a dangerous one." Harper's mouth tightened. Bennett inhaled slowly, performing patience. "This is exactly the pattern we have discussed before. You continue to blur the boundaries of your role." Olivia felt Monica watching from the nursing station. She felt Elaine watching from the bedside. She felt the whole department pretending not to watch while watching completely. Bennett lowered his voice. "You have a history of escalating disagreements in ways that undermine physician authority." Olivia almost laughed, but there was no room for laughter. "Physician authority will not protect Sophie Mitchell from septic shock." Bennett's eyes hardened by a fraction. "That is enough." "No," Olivia said, and surprised herself with how calm she sounded. "It is not enough. A 7-year-old child has a fever, lethargy, and a non-blanching petechial rash. I have requested immediate antibiotic treatment. That request has been declined. I am documenting it." Harper said, "You already documented it. Then I will document the escalation." Bennett looked at her for a long moment, and Olivia saw the calculation behind his composed face. He was not thinking about Sophie. Not first. He was thinking about liability, hierarchy, control. He was thinking about the danger of a nurse who wrote things down before the official story had time to settle. "Olivia Carter," Bennett said quietly, "you are being placed on administrative suspension pending review of your conduct." The emergency department seemed to lose sound for half a second. Even the monitors felt distant. Olivia stared at him. She had imagined this possibility before in the bleak private theater of sleepless nights, but imagination had not prepared her for the strange physical sensation of it, as if the floor had dropped 1 inch beneath her feet and no one else noticed. "You are suspending me," she said. "Pending review. For advocating for a child, for insubordination, disruption of clinical workflow, and repeated failure to respect established decision-making protocols." There it was. The language. Smooth as marble. Cold as a sealed tomb. Elaine Mitchell stepped forward. "Wait. She's the only one who seems scared enough." Bennett turned to her with a practiced, sympathetic expression. "Mrs. Mitchell, your granddaughter is receiving appropriate care." Elaine's face trembled. "Then why do I believe her and not you?" It was a small sentence, spoken by an old woman in a blue hat, but it struck the room like a bell. Harper looked away first. Bennett did not. Men like Bennett did not look away from people they intended to manage. "I understand this is frightening," he said, "but this is a personnel matter." Olivia looked at Elaine and wished, fiercely, that she could give her more than a look. Then she turned back to the computer terminal and began typing. Her note was precise, clean, and devastating in its restraint. Patient, Sophie Mitchell, 7-year-old female, presenting with acute fever of 103.7, lethargy, reported photophobia, leg pain, and non-blanching petechial rash to upper extremities and neck. Nurse expressed urgent concern for possible meningococcal septicemia and recommended immediate empiric ceftriaxone. Attending physician declined immediate antibiotic administration pending laboratory results. Administrator notified. Nurse formally disagreed with delay due to risk of rapid deterioration. She included times. She included names. She included the grandmother's statements. She did not include anger. Anger could be dismissed. Facts were harder to bury. though Blue Ridge Regional had become skilled with shovels. "Stop typing," Harper said. Olivia did not stop. Bennett stepped closer. "Ms. Carter." She finished the note, saved it, and printed a copy before anyone could stop her. The printer hummed in the corner like some tiny, ridiculous creature unaware that it had just become part of a war. Olivia signed the printed note and handed it to Monica. "Please make sure this remains attached to the chart." Monica took it without hesitation. Her face was unreadable, but her fingers closed around the paper with quiet force. "I will." Bennett's eyes flicked to Monica, then back to Olivia. "Security will escort you out." Olivia removed her gloves slowly. She looked once more at Sophie, whose breathing had become more labored, and the helplessness that rose in her nearly split her open. She had seen blood, grief, arrogance, and bureaucratic cowardice, but nothing hurt quite like being forced to walk away from a patient who still needed you. The security guard who arrived was named Kyle Patterson, a young man in his mid-20s with a soft round face, sandy hair, and the uncomfortable posture of someone who had joined hospital security expecting lost visitors and parking disputes, not moral injury. He would not meet Olivia's eyes at first. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm supposed to walk you to the exit." Olivia nodded. "I know." She went to her locker under the attention of people pretending to chart. She placed her stethoscope into her bag, then paused with her hand on the metal door. Inside the locker was a photograph she kept taped to the back wall. Her younger brother Caleb at 17, grinning beside a fishing pond, alive in the careless way only teenagers believe they are allowed to be. Caleb had died years earlier after a delayed diagnosis in a small rural clinic, a death that had carved Olivia's life into before and after. He was one of the reasons she became a nurse. He was also the reason she could not ignore a warning sign. Not ever. Not even when ignoring it would have made her life easier. She touched the edge of the photograph once, then closed the locker. As Kyle escorted her through the hallway, Olivia heard Harper ordering labs and fluids behind her, still no antibiotic in his voice. She wanted to turn back. Every instinct in her body screamed to turn back. But two security staff now stood near the nurse station, and Bennett remained by the desk with his arms folded, watching her departure like a man watching a file being moved to storage. Monica stood beside Sophie's chart, holding Olivia's note. Their eyes met. Monica gave the smallest nod. It was not comfort. It was a promise. At the glass exit doors, Kyle stopped. Rain streaked the world outside. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, so quietly Olivia almost missed it. She looked at him. He swallowed. "My little sister was sick once. Different thing. But I heard what you said in there." Olivia's throat tightened, but she only nodded. "Then remember it," she said. "If you ever see something wrong, remember what it looks like when people ask you to ignore it." Kyle looked ashamed, though she had not meant to shame him. She meant to leave him with a lantern, however small. Olivia stepped into the rain with her bag over one shoulder and her white shoes splashing through shallow puddles. Behind her, Blue Ridge Regional glowed with sterile confidence. Every window bright, every sign polished, every public promise intact. From the outside, no one would know a little girl's life had just become a battle between medicine and ego. No one would know a nurse had been removed not for failing, but for refusing to pretend. Olivia reached her car and sat behind the wheel without turning the engine on. Rain tapped against the windshield. Her hands rested in her lap, still steady, and that steadiness frightened her more than tears would have. She thought of Sophie Mitchell's small, fever-bright face. She thought of Elaine's trembling hands. She thought of the note Monica now held like a match in a dark room. For 3 years, Olivia had tried to stay invisible. She had lowered her voice, softened her warnings, documented instead of shouted, survived instead of fought. But invisibility had a cost, and today the bill had come due in the form of a 7-year-old child burning with fever beneath hospital lights. Olivia closed her eyes and whispered a prayer so small it barely had words. Not for her job, not for vindication, not even for justice, though some buried part of her still wanted it. She prayed for Sophie to live. And somewhere inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital, while rain washed the windows clean and administrators began shaping their version of events, Olivia's written warning remained in the system, quiet as a seed beneath winter soil, waiting for the moment when truth would finally break through. Olivia Carter did not drive home as much as she drifted there, carried through the rain by habit, red traffic lights, and the kind of silence that follows a wound too fresh to understand. Lexington moved around her in blurred strips of yellow and silver. Storefronts glowed behind wet glass. Tires hissed across the pavement. Somewhere beyond the dark roofs and the bare winter trees, Blue Ridge Regional Hospital still burned with fluorescent light, still pretending to be holy. Olivia kept both hands on the wheel and stared ahead, but her mind remained in bay too, besides Sophie Mitchell's fevered body and Elaine Mitchell's trembling hands. Every few blocks, she heard Dr. Stephen Harper's voice again. "You are a nurse." Then Richard Bennett's smoother sentence followed like a polished blade. "You are being placed on administrative suspension pending review." She had been insulted before. She had been dismissed, corrected, and made to feel like an inconvenience in comfortable shoes. But walking away from Sophie had done something different to her. It had touched a place grief had already hollowed out years ago when her brother Caleb died, because someone had decided a warning could wait. Her apartment sat on the second floor of a modest brick building near Woodland Park, the kind of place where the stairs always smelled faintly of laundry soap and old rain. Olivia lived alone, though not carelessly. Her home was small, clean, and arranged with the discipline of a woman who did not like chaos following her indoors. A navy couch faced a low bookshelf. A kettle sat on the stove. Near the window, a potted rosemary plant leaned toward the weak winter light as if it, too, was trying to survive by posture alone. There were few photographs. Olivia had learned that photographs could become little altars if one was not careful, and she already carried enough ghosts without giving them frames. Still, Caleb's picture stood on her kitchen shelf in a simple wooden frame. 17 years old, dark curls, crooked smile, fishing rod in one hand, the whole world still foolish enough to believe it could keep him. She dropped her bag beside the door and stood in the apartment without removing her coat. The quiet felt too large. At the hospital, quiet meant danger. At home, quiet meant she had no task strong enough to hold her upright. She washed her hands, even though she had already washed them before leaving. She scrubbed until the skin around her knuckles pinked, then stopped when she realized she was still trying to remove the feeling of helplessness. Her phone sat on the counter. She looked at it once, twice, then turned it face down as if the screen were an eye. At 10:17 p.m., the phone vibrated. Olivia did not move at first. Then she picked it up. The message was from Monica Reed. "You were right. Sophie is in ICU. Confirmed meningococcal septicemia. Ceftriaxone started. She's critical, but alive. I wanted you to know." Olivia read the message once. Then again. Then a third time, each reading striking a different part of her. "You were right." It should have brought relief, but the words came carrying ash. Being right meant Sophie had been in danger. Being right meant the delay had mattered. Being right meant a child's bloodstream had become the battlefield where pride and protocol had wasted precious time. Olivia placed the phone gently on the counter and gripped the edge of the sink until her fingers ached. She whispered, "Hold on, baby girl." It was not a medical instruction. It was a prayer. The kind of prayer that had no poetry, only need. Monica sent another message a minute later. "Elaine asked about you. I told her you had gone home. I didn't tell her everything." Olivia typed, then deleted, then typed again. "Thank you for staying with the chart." Monica replied almost instantly. "I still have the copy." That sentence moved through Olivia like a match struck in darkness. Monica Reed did not say things accidentally. If she said she still had the copy, she meant the note had not disappeared. Not yet. Olivia imagined the printed page folded or hidden or slipped into some file where it might survive long enough to matter. A thin piece of paper against a whole institution. Ridiculous, really. Like sending a candle to argue with a thunderstorm. But sometimes, Olivia thought, God used candles because storms were too proud to notice them until the room was already lit. She finally took off her coat. She made tea and forgot to drink it. She sat on the couch with the television off and listened to rain tap the window. Sleep did not come close. Her body was exhausted, but her mind remained lit from within by worry. Sophie in ICU. Elaine in some plastic chair, waiting. Monica guarding a note. Harper adjusting his version of events. Bennett preparing language for human resources. Olivia could almost hear it. Concerns regarding professionalism, failure to follow chain of command, disruptive conduct in a high-pressure clinical environment. The words would sound reasonable. Dangerous things often did. Poison, when diluted correctly, could look like water. Near midnight, Olivia opened the bottom drawer of her bedroom dresser and removed a small metal box. Inside were documents from a life she rarely touched. Old military medical certifications, a faded challenge coin, a photograph of her wearing desert camouflage beside three people whose names she never spoke out loud, and a folded letter from a commanding officer written in language so vague it praised bravery without admitting where that bravery had occurred. Olivia had not entered the army to become a legend. She had entered because Caleb's death had broken her faith in helplessness. She had wanted skill, not comfort, not sympathy, skill. The ability to walk toward a body in crisis and know what to do with her hands. For years she had done exactly that in places where the sky sounded like metal tearing, where blood dried brown before anyone could record its origin, where young men joked while dying because fear needed a mask. Then she had come home and chosen civilian nursing because she thought ordinary emergencies would be easier to carry. She had been wrong in a way that almost made her laugh. War was honest about its violence. Hospitals dressed some of theirs in policy. At 2:03 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Olivia stared at it. Her first instinct was not fear, but recognition, though she could not explain recognition of something she had never seen. Unknown calls after midnight belonged to bad news, scammers, wrong numbers, or the past. She let it ring 3 times before answering. Olivia Carter, she said. For 1 second there was only silence. Not empty silence. Listening silence. Then a man's voice came through, low, controlled, and precise. Ms. Carter. Who is this? A person who needs to confirm you are reachable. Olivia stood slowly. The apartment changed around her. The shadows sharpened. Reachable for what? There may be a situation developing. We may need you soon. She felt cold move down her spine. Need me as a nurse? A pause. Too long. Need your skill set. Olivia's mouth went dry. That phrase did not belong to hospital administrators. It did not belong to scheduling offices or malpractice attorneys. It belonged to another world, one she had locked behind discipline, silence, and years of pretending she could be ordinary if she folded herself neatly enough. Who gave you this number? I can't answer that. Then I can't help you. You already have. The words landed strangely. Olivia stepped toward the window and looked down at the wet street. No car idled outside. No dark figure stood under the stairwell light. Still, she had the old sensation of being observed by a system larger than the room. Is this about Sophie Mitchell? Another pause. In part. Her hand tightened around the phone. What does that mean? It means your documentation mattered. Before Olivia could speak, the line clicked dead. She held the phone at her ear for several seconds after the call ended. The apartment seemed to be holding its breath. Her tea had gone cold on the table. Outside, rain whispered over Lexington like the city was confessing something too softly to be understood. Olivia checked the number. Blocked. No callback option. No trace useful enough for an ordinary person. She set the phone down, picked it up again, set it down once more, then went to the window and watched the street until dawn softened the edges of the buildings. She did not sleep. The next day unfolded in slow, humiliating pieces. At 8:12 a.m., an email from Human Resources arrived. The sender was Patricia Lowell, Blue Ridge Regional's HR director, a compact woman in her 50s with iron gray hair, small wire glasses, and a voice that could make cruelty sound like a scheduling issue. Olivia had met Patricia only twice. Both times, Patricia had smiled without warmth and spoken in paragraphs. The email informed Olivia that she was barred from clinical duties pending administrative review, prohibited from entering patient care areas, and expected to make herself available for interviews regarding the incident involving inappropriate escalation of disagreement with attending physician leadership. There was no mention of Sophie's confirmed diagnosis. There was no mention of antibiotics. There was certainly no apology. Institutions rarely apologized before they knew how much evidence existed. Olivia read the email at her kitchen table while sunlight struggled through the clouds. She replied with one sentence. I acknowledge receipt and request that all communications regarding this matter be provided in writing. Then she closed the laptop. It was not defiance exactly. It was survival in formal clothing. By noon, Monica called during what sounded like a stolen break. Olivia could hear hospital noise behind her. Carts rolling, muffled announcements. Someone laughing too loudly near a nurse station. Monica's voice was lower than usual. Sophie's holding. Olivia closed her eyes. Holding how? Pressure improved. Fever still high. ICU started the full protocol. Infectious disease came in this morning. Neurological signs? Too early to say, but she recognized her grandmother for a few seconds. Olivia breathed for the first time all day. That's good. It is. Monica paused. Harper is saying the team was already moving toward antibiotics when you escalated. Olivia gave a humorless smile. Of course he is. Bennett is saying your suspension had nothing to do with the diagnosis. Of course he is. And Elaine Mitchell is asking why the nurse who recognized it first was sent home. That quieted Olivia. She shouldn't have to fight that battle. Maybe not. But she's angrier than she looks. Olivia pictured Elaine, small beneath her blue knitted hat, standing like a frail prophet in a temple full of polished men. Tell her Sophie is what matters. I did. She said truth matters too. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Monica said, Did anyone call you last night? Olivia's eyes opened. Why? I'm asking because 2 men came through administration this morning. Not local. Not state either. Unless state employees got better suits and worse smiles. Olivia stood. What did they want? They asked about records management, patient safety reports, incident notes. The cold line returned, the same one she had felt when she saw Sophie's rash. Did they give names? No. Bennett walked them upstairs himself. Harper looked like he swallowed a battery. Monica. I know. Monica's voice softened slightly, which for her was almost an embrace. Be careful. About what? About thinking this is only about you. The call ended soon after. Olivia remained standing in the middle of her kitchen, the phone in her hand, while the day opened a new door in her mind. The anonymous call. Monica's copy. Men asking about records. Sophie's diagnosis. A pattern was beginning to appear, but only in fragments, like a constellation seen through broken glass. Olivia did not know what shape it made yet. She only knew it was not random. That evening, she tried to behave like a suspended nurse should behave. She ate soup. She answered no unknown calls. She reviewed her own notes from memory and wrote a private timeline of everything that had happened with Sophie Mitchell. Arrival time, symptoms, Harper's responses, Bennett's arrival, her documentation, her removal. She included what she remembered of Elaine's statements. She saved one copy to an encrypted drive and printed another, placing it in the same metal box with the old military papers. The act steadied her. Truth liked preparation. Lies preferred fog. Night came early. The rain had stopped, but the streets remained slick and black under the lamps. Olivia stood at the window, wearing a gray sweater and jeans, hair loose for once around her shoulders. Without the uniform, she looked younger, and that bothered her. The uniform had been armor. It had told the world what she was allowed to do. Now she looked like an ordinary woman in a small apartment, suspended from a job that had once given shape to her days. The emptiness pressed in again. At 9:38 p.m., Monica sent a final message. Sophie, more responsive, asked for her stuffed rabbit. Elaine cried. Thought you'd want to know. Olivia sat down on the edge of the couch and covered her mouth with one hand. She did not cry exactly. The tears came, but quietly, without drama, as if they were simply excess rain the body had been saving. Sophie had asked for her stuffed rabbit. A little girl still existed beneath the fever. A little girl was fighting her way back toward herself. Olivia whispered another prayer, this one with words. Thank you. Keep her. Please keep her. Then, because the human heart is a strange and stubborn animal, relief made room for anger. Not hot anger. Not reckless anger. The deeper kind. The kind that sharpened itself on memory. Sophie had nearly been lost because a system valued obedience over urgency. Olivia had been removed because she wrote down what the system wanted softened. And somewhere, perhaps in an administrative office with framed awards on the wall, men were already arranging the story so that no one would have to ask why a child's correct treatment arrived late. At 10:51 p.m., Olivia put on her coat. She told herself she only needed air. Then she told herself she only wanted to drive. By the time she reached the parking lot, she had stopped lying. She was going to Blue Ridge Regional. Not to enter. Not to violate the suspension order. Just to see the building. Just to sit across the street and look at the place that had swallowed her life for 3 years and then spat her out when she became inconvenient. The drive took 15 minutes. Lexington at night had a gentler face than it did by day. The horse country beyond the city lay hidden in darkness, but traces of it remained in the open spaces, the old stone walls, the wide roads glistening after rain. Blue Ridge Regional appeared before her like a ship of glass and light, its upper floors glowing against the low clouds. Ambulances came and went beneath the emergency bay canopy. The red sign above the entrance reflected in puddles like a warning written twice. Olivia parked in the far visitor lot, under a maple tree stripped bare by winter. She turned off the headlights, but left the engine running for heat. From there, she could see the emergency entrance, the ambulance doors, the security post, and the row of windows that belonged to the ICU floor. Somewhere behind those windows, Sophie Mitchell slept or fought or dreamed fever dreams with a stuffed rabbit beside her. Olivia rested her hands on the steering wheel and let the familiar rhythm of the hospital pull at her. Even suspended, she could read the place. Too many ambulances in a short stretch meant a rush. A cluster of nurses visible through the glass meant boarding problems. A security guard pacing meant agitation inside. The hospital spoke in movement, and Olivia had spent years becoming fluent. A voice crackled from the small emergency scanner clipped beneath her dashboard. It was an old habit, one she rarely admitted to anyone. Former medics did not always lose their need to hear trouble before trouble arrived. The scanner mostly carried fire and EMS traffic, nothing secret, nothing dramatic most nights. Motor vehicle collisions, chest pain, falls, overdoses, the ordinary litany of human fragility. Then the dispatcher's tone changed. Medic 7, be advised. Blue Ridge Regional Receiving. Male patient, approximately 40s, multiple gunshot wounds. Government contractor identification on scene. Critical condition. Unresponsive intermittently. ETA 6 minutes. Olivia sat upright. The radio continued. Reported wounds to thorax and shoulder. Significant blood loss. Airway compromised but maintained. Law enforcement escort en route. Blue Ridge Trauma Team notified. Government contractor. Multiple gunshot wounds. Law enforcement escort. The words did not belong together in an ordinary Lexington night. Olivia felt the old part of herself wake, not dramatically, not like a beast breaking chains, but like a blade being drawn from cloth. Her breathing changed first. Slower. Measured. Her eyes moved across the emergency entrance, noting exits, personnel, distance, timing. She hated that it returned so easily. She hated even more that part of her was grateful. Skill had no loyalty to the life one wished to live. It came when called. She reached for her phone and almost called Monica. Then she stopped. What would she say? I'm outside the hospital. I'm not allowed to enter. Listening to a scanner. And something about a wounded government contractor feels connected to an anonymous call from last night. It sounded insane. Worse, it sounded true. The ambulance bay doors opened at Blue Ridge. A nurse stepped out, then another. A trauma cart appeared. 2 security guards moved toward the entrance. Inside the glass, Olivia saw motion increase, quick and concentrated. The hospital was preparing, but not calmly. Someone had used words that made administrators nervous. The scanner crackled again. Patient lost pulse briefly in transport. ROSC achieved. Repeat, pulse restored. ETA 4 minutes. Olivia's hand went to the door handle. She did not open it. Not yet. She stared at the hospital through the windshield, while 2 versions of herself stood in judgment. The suspended nurse knew she had no authority, no badge, no legal reason to cross that parking lot. The medic she had once been knew authority was a poor substitute for action when a body was failing. Between them stood the woman who had left Sophie behind and did not know if she could survive leaving another patient behind if she was meant to help. Then her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Olivia answered without speaking. The same low male voice from the night before said, Ms. Carter. Her eyes fixed on the ambulance entrance. Who is this? You are near Blue Ridge Regional. It was not a question. Olivia's blood cooled. Are you watching me? We are watching the hospital. What is happening? A pause. A man is arriving there in critical condition. He may ask for you. He doesn't know me. He knows enough. The distant wail of sirens approached from the west, rising through the wet dark like something ancient and wounded. Olivia said, I am suspended. Not by anyone whose authority matters tonight. The line went dead. For 1 second, Olivia remained completely still. Then the ambulance turned into the hospital drive, lights flashing red against the rain-polished pavement. Behind it came two black SUVs with no markings, moving too smoothly, too deliberately, too close. The ambulance backed toward the bay. The SUVs stopped at sharp angles near the entrance, and men stepped out before the vehicles had fully settled. Not police. Not ordinary security. Tactical posture. Dark jackets. Eyes moving. Hands close to weapons without touching them. Olivia opened her car door. Cold air struck her face. The hospital lights shimmered ahead of her, bright and merciless. She crossed the parking lot fast, not running, but close. Her white nursing shoes were gone. Tonight she wore dark boots that splashed through puddles without sound. As she reached the sidewalk, she heard the ambulance doors open and a paramedic shout something she could not make out. She saw the gurney move. She saw blood on the sheet. A security guard near the visitor entrance turned. It was Kyle Patterson. His young face tightened with recognition. "Miss Carter, you're not supposed to." "I know," Olivia said, still walking. He stepped half into her path, torn between policy and the look on her face. Kyle was not a brave man yet, perhaps, but bravery often began as confusion in the presence of someone else's certainty. He looked toward the ambulance bay, then back at her. "Is someone dying?" Olivia did not slow. "Probably." Kyle moved aside. And that was how Olivia Carter, suspended nurse, former combat medic, woman who had spent 3 years trying to become invisible, walked back through the doors of Blue Ridge Regional Hospital just as the night opened its mouth and called her name. The automatic doors slid open, and Olivia stepped into Blue Ridge Regional Hospital for the first time since her suspension. Immediately, she felt the difference. Hospitals always carried stress, but this was something else. The tension in the emergency department felt sharper, stretched tighter. Nurses moved faster than usual. Security personnel stood in positions they normally never occupied. Several administrative staff had appeared despite the late hour, which was never a good sign. Administrators rarely came running unless money, reputation, or fear had arrived first. The familiar smell of antiseptic and coffee washed over her. For a brief second, Olivia felt as though she had never left. Then reality returned. She was suspended. She had no badge, no authority, no right to be there. And yet every instinct she possessed told her that leaving would be a mistake. The ambulance bay doors burst open. The gurney came through at speed. 2 paramedics pushed with controlled urgency, while a third squeezed blood into a pressure infuser attached to the patient's foreline. "Male, approximately 42, one paramedic shouted. Multiple gunshot wounds. Significant blood loss. Lost pulse once in transport. Return of spontaneous circulation achieved after 90 seconds. Blood pressure 62 systolic and dropping." The trauma team surged forward. Doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, everyone moving at once. Yet Olivia's attention locked onto the patient. Dark hair, broad shoulders, athletic build despite the blood loss. His face was pale beneath streaks of dried blood. The man looked as though physical discipline had been part of his life for years. Even unconscious, there was something controlled about him. Something trained. Something familiar. Then Olivia noticed the wounds. One through the right shoulder. One grazing the neck. 2 penetrating wounds along the left side of the chest. And immediately something inside her tightened. Not fear. Recognition. A clinical pattern. The left side of his chest wasn't moving correctly. The movement was subtle. Most people wouldn't notice. Many physicians wouldn't notice immediately while focusing on blood loss. But Olivia saw it. The left lung wasn't participating properly. Air exchange was failing. The injury pattern was wrong. Very wrong. She moved closer without realizing it. "Olivia," the voice came from behind her. "Monica Reed." The charge nurse pushed through the crowd and grabbed Olivia's arm. Relief flashed across Monica's face before concern replaced it. "What are you doing here?" Olivia never looked away from the patient. "Who is he?" "No idea." "Federal?" Monica glanced toward the men surrounding the trauma bay. "Looks like it." The men stood apart from hospital personnel. 4 of them. None wore uniforms. All moved like professionals. Their eyes constantly scanned entrances, exits, and faces. They were not protecting the hospital. They were protecting the patient. One of them caught Olivia watching. A tall man in his late 40s. 6'2". Then anger appeared. "Olivia, you're suspended. He has a tension pneumothorax. We haven't confirmed that. You don't need imaging to confirm what his body is already telling you. Harper's jaw tightened. The surrounding staff froze. Monica stared at Olivia. Several nurses exchanged glances. The old argument had returned. Only this time the stakes were higher. Much higher. Harper pointed toward the exit. You need to leave. Olivia ignored him. The monitor screamed again. Oxygen saturation continued falling. The patient's chest movement worsened. Every second mattered. Needle decompression. Her voice remained calm. Now. Harper looked furious. You're not the attending physician. No. She met his eyes. But if you wait another 10 minutes, you'll be pronouncing him. The room became silent. Not completely silent. Machines still beeped. Staff still moved. But the emotional atmosphere changed. Everyone heard the challenge. Everyone knew someone was right. The question was who? The tall federal officer stepped forward. The scar along his jaw became more visible beneath the trauma bay lights. Up close he looked even more dangerous. Not because of aggression. Because of certainty. The kind acquired through experience. The kind people developed after surviving things that killed others. His gaze shifted between Harper and Olivia. Then he spoke. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Listen to her. Harper stared. Excuse me. The officer didn't blink. Listen. The word carried enough authority to stop movement around the room. Olivia noticed something then. Rank insignia. Subtle. Easy to miss. Not military uniform, but military background. Without question, the officer's posture gave it away. His eyes never left Harper. Neither man moved. Finally, Harper exhaled sharply. What exactly are you seeing? For the first time that night, he wasn't dismissing her. He was asking. Actually asking. Olivia stepped to the bedside. The patient's breathing rattled. No sound emerged. Only blood. Only effort. Only one final attempt. Olivia leaned closer. The man's mouth moved again. This time she heard it. A whisper. Barely audible. A single word. Olivia. The room froze. Monica's eyes widened. Harper stared. The federal officer's expression changed instantly. Not surprise. Confirmation. As though the wounded man had just verified something important. Something expected. Olivia's pulse hammered once. Hard. She had never seen this man before in her life. She was absolutely certain of that. And yet he had spoken her name. The patient slipped back toward unconsciousness. Alarms continued screaming. Blood continued flowing. But suddenly none of that felt like the biggest mystery in the room. Because somewhere between the anonymous phone call, the federal agents, the wounded man, and the fact that he somehow knew her name, Olivia Carter realized this was no longer just a medical emergency. Something much larger had arrived at Blue Ridge Regional Hospital. And somehow, it had arrived looking for her. For a moment, nobody moved. The trauma bay seemed suspended between one heartbeat and the next. Monitors continued screaming. Blood continued dripping through tubing. Respiratory equipment hissed. Yet every person near the gurney had heard the same thing. Olivia. The wounded man had spoken her name. Monica Reed looked from the patient to Olivia and back again. Confusion spread across her face. Monica was not a woman easily surprised. 15 years in emergency medicine had trained her to absorb chaos without flinching. But this was different. This was personal. Harper broke the silence first. You know him. His voice carried accusation before curiosity. Olivia barely heard him. She was staring at the patient. The man's eyes had already closed again. His pulse remained dangerously unstable. Oxygen saturation continued slipping downward. Whatever mystery connected him to her would have to wait. The patient would not. He still has a tension pneumothorax. Olivia's voice cut through the room. Harper hesitated. Only for a second. But Olivia noticed. For the first time since she had worked under him, Stephen Harper was uncertain. Not because she had challenged him. Because reality had. The federal officer stepped beside the gurney. Up close, his presence seemed to fill space the way certain storms fill the horizon. His face remained controlled, but his eyes never stopped assessing. Do what needs to be done. The statement was directed toward Harper. Not Olivia, but everyone understood who had inspired it. Harper looked toward the equipment tray, then toward the monitor, then back toward the patient. Finally he nodded. Needle decompression. The room immediately accelerated into motion. A respiratory therapist rushed forward. Another nurse prepared supplies. Monica positioned herself opposite the trauma table. Olivia moved automatically. The old training returned without permission. Without hesitation. The trauma bay disappeared. Not physically. Mentally, suddenly, she wasn't in Lexington anymore. She was 26 years old again. A combat medic. A dusty field station. A wounded soldier dying in front of her. The memory lasted less than a second. Then reality returned. The catheter entered. A rush of trapped air escaped. The sound was unmistakable. Pressure released. The patient's chest expanded slightly. Oxygen saturation stopped falling. Not improving yet, but no longer falling. The entire room seemed to exhale together. Harper stared at the monitor, then at Olivia. For the briefest moment, something unfamiliar appeared in his eyes. Respect. Reluctant. Unwanted. But real. The patient still required surgery. Still required blood. Still remained in critical condition. But immediate death had been pushed back. And everyone in the room knew who had recognized the problem first. The federal officer approached Olivia. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. Monica looked nervous. Harper looked irritated. Olivia felt neither. Only curiosity. She followed the man into a quieter corridor adjacent to the trauma area. The sounds of the emergency department faded behind them. The officer stopped beneath a row of fluorescent lights. Up close, he appeared older than she first thought. Late 40s. Possibly 50. His dark hair contained more gray than black. The scar along his jaw had faded with time, but not disappeared. His eyes were steel gray. Observant. Patient. Dangerous in the way highly disciplined men often were. "My name is Samuel Walker." The name meant nothing to Olivia. At least initially. Then memory shifted. The anonymous caller. The federal presence. The wounded patient. Everything connected. "You're military." Samuel's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Used to be. You've been watching me. We've been watching the hospital." Interesting. Not a denial. Olivia folded her arms. "Then explain why a man I've never met knows my name." Samuel studied her carefully, almost evaluating. Finally he answered, "Because he knows who you used to be." Cold moved through Olivia's chest. Not fear. Recognition. The same feeling she experienced when opening old military files. The same feeling she felt whenever buried parts of her life threatened to surface. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes." Samuel nodded. "You do." Silence settled between them. The corridor suddenly felt smaller. The hospital sounds more distant. Samuel reached inside his jacket and removed a thin photograph. He handed it to her. Olivia stared. The photograph had clearly been taken years ago. 5 soldiers. 1 medic. Desert background. Dust everywhere. And there she was. Younger. Thinner. Wearing combat gear. The medic attached to a special operations unit she rarely allowed herself to remember. Her stomach tightened. "Where did you get this?" "The man in that trauma bay." Olivia looked up sharply. Samuel continued. "His name is Nathan Walker." The surname caught her attention. Walker. Same as Samuel. Family? Possibly. The resemblance existed. Similar eyes. Similar jaw structure. Samuel seemed to read her thoughts. "My younger brother." That explained it. Nathan Walker. Federal operative. Gunshot victim. The man who somehow knew her name. Olivia looked back at the photograph. "I never met him." "No." Samuel agreed. "But he knows your file." Her eyes narrowed. "My file?" "Your military record." The words landed heavily. Olivia laughed once. A short, humorless sound. "My military record is classified." Exactly. That answer bothered her more than any other. Because Samuel wasn't bluffing. He knew things. Enough things. The question was why. Before she could ask, Samuel continued. Nathan was conducting an investigation. Into what? The hospital. The answer arrived so quickly Olivia almost missed it. The hospital? For 6 weeks. Samuel leaned against the wall. "We've been reviewing incidents involving altered documentation, unexplained disciplinary actions, patient safety concerns, and administrative interference." Every word tightened something inside Olivia. Because every word sounded familiar. Too familiar. She thought about Sophie. Her note. The suspension. Monica hiding a copy. Samuel watched realization form across her face. Exactly. You know about Sophie Mitchell. We know about several cases. The corridor suddenly felt cold. Olivia remembered dozens of small incidents over 3 years. Concerns disappearing. Complaints vanishing. Reports changing language. Nurses leaving unexpectedly. At the time, each event seemed isolated. Now they appeared connected. Pieces of a pattern. What exactly are you saying? Samuel looked toward the trauma bay. Nathan believed someone inside Blue Ridge Regional has been manipulating records. The sentence hung between them. He was gathering evidence. And got shot because of it. Samuel's expression darkened. We don't know yet. Which meant they probably suspected exactly that. A radio crackled on Samuel's shoulder. He listened briefly, then answered. Copy. The transmission ended. Nathan is stable enough for surgery. Olivia nodded. Good. At least one life might be saved tonight. But Samuel wasn't finished. There is another reason I wanted to speak with you. Of course there was. Olivia folded her arms tighter. What reason? Samuel studied her. The report. What report? The one you filed before being suspended. The hallway became silent. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. My note regarding Sophie? Yes. Samuel reached into his jacket again. This time he produced a tablet. Several screens appeared. Hospital documentation. Timestamps. Administrative logs. Patient records. The amount of information shocked her. We obtained copies. Olivia stared. How? Samuel ignored the question. Your report still exists. That surprised her. It shouldn't. No. His eyes met hers. It shouldn't. The implication struck immediately. Someone had preserved it. Someone inside the hospital. Someone aware enough to understand its importance. Monica? Maybe. Someone else? Possibly. Samuel continued. Your documentation may become important evidence. Evidence. The word sounded wrong when applied to nursing notes. Yet suddenly it made perfect sense. Olivia looked through the nearby window toward the emergency department. Blue Ridge Regional appeared exactly as it always had. Doctors working. Nurses moving. Administrators walking hallways. Normal. Respectable. Trustworthy. Yet beneath that surface something darker might be hiding. Something large enough to attract federal investigators. Something dangerous enough to leave a man bleeding in an ambulance. Samuel followed her gaze. Nathan believed there was a witness inside the hospital. Olivia turned back. A witness. Someone preserving information. Monica's face flashed through her mind, then disappeared. Too obvious. Or maybe not. Samuel pushed away from the wall. One step at a time. The radio crackled again. More urgent this time. Samuel listened, then immediately straightened. Something had changed. What happened? His eyes shifted toward the trauma bay. Nathan is asking for you. Olivia blinked. He just came out of surgery prep. He's barely conscious. Then why? Samuel interrupted. Because according to the nurse inside, the first thing he said when he woke up was your name. For a second, neither moved. The hallway lights hummed softly overhead. The hospital continued breathing around them. Somewhere nearby, elevators opened and closed. Phones rang. Lives changed. But Olivia felt the entire night narrowing toward a single point. A wounded federal operative. A hidden investigation. A hospital under suspicion. And a man she had never met asking for her specifically. Samuel looked toward the recovery area. Then back at Olivia. We're about to get some answers. Olivia wasn't so sure. Because experience had taught her something important. The truth rarely arrived all at once. It arrived like dawn. Slowly. Reluctantly. One piece at a time. And somehow she knew that whatever Nathan Walker was about to reveal would change everything she thought she knew about Blue Ridge Regional Hospital. The hallway outside Surgical Recovery Bay 7 seemed strangely quiet compared to the chaos that had consumed the emergency department less than an hour earlier. Olivia followed Samuel Walker through the secured recovery corridor while two federal agents remained stationed outside the doors. The agents stood with the alert stillness of men who had spent years learning how to appear relaxed while preparing for violence. Neither looked older than 40. Neither smiled. Their eyes continuously tracked movement down the corridor. The atmosphere felt less like a hospital and more like a military checkpoint. Olivia hated how familiar it felt. She had spent years burying that familiarity. Now it seemed determined to dig itself back up. Samuel pushed open the recovery room door. Inside, the lights had been dimmed. Medical monitors cast pale green reflections across the walls. Nathan Walker lay propped slightly upright in the hospital bed. The surgery had lasted nearly 3 hours. The damage had been extensive. One bullet had torn through soft tissue near the shoulder. Another had grazed his neck. The chest wounds had been far more dangerous. Yet somehow he remained alive. More than alive. Awake. Nathan looked older than Olivia had first realized. Not because of age. Because of experience. He appeared perhaps 43 or 44. Dark hair streaked lightly with gray. A strong jaw covered by a day or two of rough stubble. Weathered skin. The face of a man who spent most of his life outdoors or in difficult places. His eyes drew attention immediately. Blue-gray. Intelligent. Watchful. The eyes of someone who trusted very few people. Yet when those eyes landed on Olivia, something softened. Recognition. Not familiarity. Recognition. A subtle difference. Nathan gave a weak smile. Took you long enough. His voice sounded rough from the breathing tube. Olivia folded her arms. You nearly died. Nathan considered that. Fair point. The response carried dry humor. Unexpected humor. The type used by people who had survived terrible situations often enough that fear no longer impressed them. Samuel moved closer to the bed. You should still be unconscious. Nathan looked at his older brother. You should stop saying that. Samuel sighed. The exchange told Olivia something immediately. These were brothers. Not merely biologically. Emotionally. They possessed the easy irritation of men who had spent decades saving each other's lives and criticizing each other's decisions. Nathan shifted carefully against the pillows. Pain flashed across his face. Brief but intense. Then disappeared. He controlled discomfort the way trained operators often did. By refusing to negotiate with it. His gaze returned to Olivia. You're Olivia Carter. Apparently. Another faint smile. You don't remember me. No. I didn't think you would. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. Gathering strength. Recovering energy. Every movement clearly cost him. Finally, he opened them again. 6 years ago. Northern Syria. The room became still. Olivia's heartbeat slowed. Not faster. Slower. The way it always did when buried memories began resurfacing. She remembered Syria. She remembered dust. Explosions. A mountain extraction site. A temporary medical position established inside a partially destroyed warehouse. But 6 years was a long time. Hundreds of casualties. Hundreds of faces. Nathan noticed her expression. You treated 11 wounded operators over 36 hours. Olivia remembered that mission. Barely. Mostly she remembered exhaustion. She remembered running out of supplies. Running out of sleep. Running out of patience. But not running out of patience. They kept bringing us more. Nathan nodded. I was one of them. Olivia stared. The memory arrived suddenly. Not his face. His injuries. A chest wound. Severe blood loss. An emergency procedure performed under flashlight illumination because power had failed. She remembered arguing with an officer who wanted evacuation immediately. She remembered threatening to physically restrain him if he moved the patient before stabilization. Nathan watched recognition appear. There it is. You were unconscious. Mostly. His smile widened slightly. But I remember enough. Olivia sat down beside the bed. Not because she intended to. Because her legs suddenly preferred sitting. You remembered my name for 6 years. Nathan looked amused. You saved my life. The statement landed harder than she expected. People said those words often in hospitals. Families said them. Patients said them. Doctors sometimes said them. But this felt different. Because Nathan genuinely meant it. No exaggeration. No politeness. Just fact. The room fell silent. Samuel stepped toward the window, giving them space. Not much, but enough. Nathan lowered his voice. I need to tell you something before everyone else gets involved. Olivia immediately noticed the change. His tone shifted. Less personal. More professional. More dangerous. The voice of a federal investigator. Not a patient. What? Nathan glanced toward the closed door, confirming privacy. Then back at Olivia. The people who shot me weren't trying to kill me. That statement surprised her. They shot you 4 times. Exactly. Nathan's eyes hardened. Professionals don't miss that often. Olivia considered it. He was right. The wounds had been serious, yet strangely survivable. Not execution wounds. Not quite. Samuel looked over from the window. You think it was a warning? Nathan nodded. I think someone wanted the drive. The drive. Olivia remembered Samuel mentioning it earlier. What drive? Nathan exchanged a look with his brother. A silent conversation passed between them. Then Samuel gave a small nod. Permission. Nathan looked back toward Olivia. For 6 weeks I've been investigating Blue Ridge Regional Hospital. Even hearing it spoken aloud felt strange. Because the idea sounded impossible. Hospitals were supposed to save people, not attract federal investigations. Nathan continued. What started as a patient safety review became something bigger. How much bigger? He exhaled slowly. Potentially hundreds of altered medical records. Olivia felt cold spread through her chest. Not shock. Confirmation. Part of her had already suspected. She simply hadn't wanted to believe it. Nathan noticed. You've seen it. She thought about Sophie. About disappearing complaints. About rewritten reports. About nurses leaving suddenly. About concerns that vanished into administrative reviews. Yes. Nathan nodded. Most people see isolated incidents. You see a pattern. Exactly. The monitor beside the bed beeped steadily. Nathan glanced at it, then continued. The pattern started appearing about 4 years ago. Olivia listened carefully. Every word mattered now. Patient incidents involving documented safety concerns kept changing. Changing how? The final records didn't match the original reports. The statement brought back countless uncomfortable memories. Nurses complaining quietly. Questions asked in break rooms. Stories shared after midnight shifts. Small inconsistencies. Always explainable individually. Disturbing collectively. Nathan continued. At first we thought it was administrative sloppiness. Then we found patients whose complications had disappeared from official documentation. Olivia's stomach tightened. She understood immediately. Documentation mattered. It created accountability. Without documentation, mistakes became rumors. Rumors became nothing. Nathan leaned slightly forward despite obvious pain. We found nurses who documented concerns. Like me. Exactly like you. The room seemed smaller now. The walls closer. The air heavier. What happened to them? Nathan's eyes darkened. Most were disciplined. Olivia wasn't surprised. Some transferred. Still not surprising. Several resigned. Again, predictable. Then Nathan added. A few disappeared from healthcare entirely. That caught her attention. What do you mean disappeared? Careers ended. His voice remained calm. Too calm. Their records showed performance issues. Did they actually have performance issues? No. Silence followed. Because neither needed to explain what that meant. The implications were obvious. Samuel finally stepped closer. We've identified at least 17 suspicious cases. At least. The phrase mattered. It suggested the real number was higher. Potentially much higher. Nathan pointed toward a chair near the wall. A black backpack rested there. Standard issue. Worn. Ordinary looking. Everything changed because of that bag. Olivia looked at it. Nothing special. Just a backpack. Nathan smiled slightly. Inside is a copy of the evidence. The drive. Yes. His expression became serious. Someone inside Blue Ridge spent years preserving original records. Olivia immediately thought of Monica, then dismissed it. Too simple. Too obvious. Nathan continued. We still don't know who. Someone trusted you enough to provide them. Eventually, his gaze shifted briefly toward Samuel. We spent months establishing contact. Months. Not weeks. Months. Meaning this investigation ran deeper than anyone realized. Olivia suddenly remembered something. The anonymous call. Nathan looked surprised. You got one. Two. Samuel frowned. The brothers exchanged another glance. Nathan spoke first. That wasn't us. The answer stunned her. If it wasn't you, then who was it? No one answered. Because they didn't know. For the first time that night, genuine uncertainty appeared on Samuel's face. That worried Olivia more than anything else. Experienced investigators disliked surprises, especially ones involving secret communications. Nathan settled back against the pillows. Fatigue was finally catching him. The effort of staying awake showed now. His skin looked paler, his breathing slightly heavier. Yet he continued. There is one more thing. Olivia waited. Nathan's expression became thoughtful. Careful. The person preserving evidence knew your name. Every muscle in Olivia's body tightened. What? Nathan nodded. They specifically mentioned Olivia Carter. The room fell silent. Not ordinary silence. The kind silence creates when new information changes the shape of reality. Samuel looked concerned now. Genuinely concerned. You never told me that. Nathan shrugged carefully. I wasn't sure it mattered. It matters now. Apparently it did. Olivia tried organizing her thoughts. Nothing fit. Someone inside the hospital. Someone secretly preserving evidence. Someone who knew her. Someone who wanted investigators to know her. Why? The question echoed through her mind. Why? Before she could ask anything else, the recovery room door opened. A woman entered carrying a tablet. She appeared to be in her early 40s. Tall. Athletic build. Dark skin. Short black hair cut close to the scalp. Sharp, intelligent eyes. The type of person who evaluated a room instantly and forgot nothing. Her hospital badge identified her as Dr. Rebecca Lawson, trauma surgeon. Unlike Harper, Rebecca moved without ego, without performance, pure efficiency. She glanced toward Nathan, then toward Samuel, then Olivia. Her expression suggested she already knew far more than she intended to share. Nathan needs rest. Nobody argued, because she was clearly correct. Rebecca checked the monitor, reviewed several readings, then nodded with satisfaction. You've cheated death enough for one night. Nathan managed a weak grin. I'll try harder next time. Rebecca looked unimpressed. Please don't. She turned toward Olivia. You were the nurse who recognized the pneumothorax. It wasn't a question. Olivia nodded. Rebecca studied her, not dismissively, professionally. Then she said something Olivia never expected to hear inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital. Good catch. 3 simple words. Yet somehow they carried more weight than all the administrative praise she had received during 3 years of employment. Rebecca left shortly afterward. The room quieted again. Nathan's eyes were already beginning to close, exhaustion finally winning. Before sleep took him, he looked at Olivia one last time. Be careful. The words sounded different from ordinary concern, more like a warning. Olivia felt it immediately. What aren't you telling me? Nathan managed a tired smile. That's what we're trying to figure out. His eyes closed. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. Samuel stood beside the bed, watching his brother. For a moment, he looked less like a federal investigator and more like an older brother relieved to have one more day. Then he turned toward Olivia. Neither spoke, because both understood the same thing. The investigation had just become personal, and somewhere inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital, someone already knew Olivia Carter mattered. Nathan Walker fell asleep less than 10 minutes after Dr. Rebecca Lawson left the recovery room. The exhaustion wasn't surprising. His body had survived blood loss, surgery, trauma, and whatever had happened before he arrived at Blue Ridge Regional Hospital. Even the strongest people eventually lost arguments with biology. Olivia stood quietly beside the bed for a moment. The monitor traced steady green lines across the screen. Breathing, heart rate, life. Simple things. Precious things. Nathan had risked his life investigating the hospital. Someone had shot him. Someone had wanted evidence badly enough to use bullets. And somehow that investigation had collided with her life. Olivia wasn't sure whether to feel honored or terrified. Perhaps both. Samuel Walker remained near the window. Unlike his brother, he showed no signs of fatigue. Years of military service had carved discipline into him so deeply that exhaustion seemed like something that happened to other people. Yet Olivia noticed small details. The slight stiffness in his shoulders. The way he rubbed his jaw when thinking. The faint shadows beneath his eyes. Samuel was tired. He was simply better at hiding it. Finally, he looked at Nathan and nodded. He's out. Olivia folded her arms. Now what? Samuel considered the question. Now we figure out who's helping us. The source. Yes. Olivia glanced toward the closed door. The idea continued bothering her. Someone inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital had secretly preserved evidence for years. Not weeks. Not months. Years. That required courage, patience, and constant fear, because discovery would have been disastrous. Hospitals protected their reputations aggressively. Anyone threatening that reputation often paid a price. Olivia knew that personally. Samuel spoke again. The source first contacted federal investigators 2 years ago. Olivia looked surprised. 2 years. We didn't understand what we were seeing initially. He stepped away from the window. Anonymous packages. What kind of packages? Copies of incident reports. That immediately caught her attention. Samuel continued. Patient safety concerns. Disciplinary records. Documentation discrepancies. The sender never provided a name. The more Olivia heard, the more impossible the story sounded. Not because it was unbelievable, because it was believable. She had witnessed enough strange events inside Blue Ridge Regional to understand how desperation might drive someone towards secret action. How many reports? Samuel gave a humorless smile. At first, a few, then dozens. Olivia exhaled slowly. Whoever the source was, they had committed themselves completely. This wasn't a whistleblower acting impulsively. This was someone conducting a long-term operation. Someone methodical. Someone patient. Someone who understood evidence. The thought reminded her of Monica Reed. Too much. Monica had worked at Blue Ridge longer than almost anyone. She knew where records lived. She understood hospital politics. She also possessed the stubborn moral compass required for such a risk. Yet Olivia hesitated. Monica was brave. But this felt larger than bravery. It felt strategic. Samuel seemed to read her thoughts. You're wondering who it could be? Yes. We are too. His honesty surprised her. Federal investigators usually projected certainty. Samuel seemed comfortable admitting uncertainty. Perhaps that was one reason Nathan trusted him. The recovery room door opened. One of the agents entered. A younger man, mid-30s, lean build, short brown hair, sharp features. The face of someone who spent most of his life observing rather than speaking. His name tag identified him as Daniel Ross. Daniel moved directly toward Samuel. Professional. Efficient. Sir. Samuel immediately recognized the tone. Something had happened. What is it? Daniel glanced briefly toward Olivia, then continued. We found another alteration. Samuel's expression hardened. Where? Hospital network. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. Tonight. Daniel nodded. 41 minutes ago. The room suddenly felt colder. Someone was still modifying records. Right now? While federal investigators occupied the building. Samuel's jaw tightened visibly. Which file? Daniel looked down at the tablet in his hands. Then back up. Sophie Mitchell. Silence. Complete silence. Olivia felt as though someone had struck her. What? Daniel turned the screen toward her. Several digital records appeared. Timestamps. Access logs. Revision history. She wasn't a technology expert. She didn't need to be. The evidence was obvious. Someone had accessed Sophie's file. Someone had modified language. Recent language. Tonight. After Olivia's suspension. After the diagnosis. After everything. No. The word escaped before she could stop it. Daniel nodded grimly. They changed the timeline. Olivia stepped closer. The original documentation described concerns appearing during tree-off. The amended version shifted those concerns later. Subtly, carefully, but significantly. Someone was attempting to reduce the appearance of delay, trying to protect decisions, protect people, protect liability, exactly as Nathan had described. The proof sat directly in front of her. Suddenly, the entire investigation became real. Not theoretical, not historical. Real. Present. Active. Someone inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital was altering records while federal investigators walked the halls. That required confidence. Or panic. Possibly both. Samuel stared at the screen. They know we're here. Daniel nodded. Looks that way. Can we identify the account? Daniel hesitated. That hesitation worried Olivia. Because professionals hesitated only when answers became complicated. Finally, Daniel said, the login belongs to Richard Bennett. Olivia felt no surprise. Only disappointment. The administrator's face immediately appeared in her mind. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Perfect explanations. She remembered Sophie. The suspension. The carefully chosen language. Now another piece clicked into place. Samuel looked toward the sleeping Nathan. Then back at Daniel. Does Bennett know we've seen it? Not yet. A long silence followed. Samuel's mind was clearly working through possibilities. Evidence. Timing. Strategy. Eventually he spoke. Keep watching. Daniel nodded. And Bennett? Leave him alone for now. That answer surprised Olivia. You aren't going to confront him? Samuel looked at her. No. Why? Because people make mistakes when they believe they're winning. The logic made immediate sense. Samuel continued. If Bennett thinks he's cleaning up evidence successfully, he'll keep moving. Give us more. Olivia remembered something Nathan had said earlier. A system of concealment. A pattern. Not one mistake. Many. Samuel wasn't hunting a single altered report. He was hunting an entire structure. Daniel departed soon afterward. The door closed. The room quieted again. Yet the atmosphere had changed completely. The threat no longer felt historical. Someone was actively responding to the investigation. Actively protecting themselves. Olivia moved toward the hallway. She suddenly needed air. Needed distance from monitors and secrets. Samuel followed. Outside the recovery room, the corridor remained mostly empty. Night shift personnel moved occasionally between departments. Machines hummed. Lights reflected from polished floors. Hospitals after midnight always felt strange. Half asleep. Half awake. Caught between worlds. Olivia leaned lightly against the wall. Do you think Bennett is behind everything? Samuel considered. No. The answer surprised her. No. People like Bennett rarely create systems. Samuel crossed his arms. They manage them. Interesting distinction. Olivia waited. Samuel continued. The person who built this operation understands hospitals. Documentation. Compliance. Liability. His eyes narrowed slightly. Bennett benefits from it. But I don't think he designed it. Olivia felt another piece shift. Meaning someone else remained hidden. Someone smarter. Someone more careful. Someone who had avoided detection for years. The realization sent an uncomfortable chill through her. Because hidden enemies were always more dangerous than visible ones. Samuel's radio suddenly crackled. A voice spoke quickly. Too quickly. Samuel listened. His expression changed instantly. Concern. Urgency. Something worse. What happened? Samuel didn't answer immediately. The transmission continued. Then ended. Finally, he looked at Olivia. The source. Her heartbeat quickened. What about them? Samuel's face hardened. We just received a message. A message? He nodded. Sent 20 minutes ago. Olivia stared. The source had communicated again. After years. After Nathan was shot. After investigators arrived. What does it say? Samuel reached into his pocket, removed his phone, then handed it to her. The message contained only one sentence. No greeting. No explanation. No signature. Just 7 words. They're watching Olivia Carter. Move before morning. Olivia felt every drop of blood leave her face. The hallway suddenly seemed too quiet. Too empty. Too exposed. Samuel took the phone back. Neither spoke. Because the meaning was obvious. Someone inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital knew exactly who she was. And somewhere in the building, someone had just risked everything to warn her. For several seconds after reading the message, Olivia could not speak. The corridor around her remained unchanged. The fluorescent lights still hummed. A distant elevator bell still echoed somewhere down the hall. A nurse pushed a medication cart past an intersection. Everything appeared normal. Yet nothing felt normal anymore. They're watching Olivia Carter. Move before morning. The message repeated itself inside her mind. Not because of fear. Because of precision. The source had not written be careful. They had not written you are in danger. They had written move before morning. A warning. Specific. Urgent. Immediate. Samuel studied her expression. You understand why I didn't want you leaving alone. Olivia looked toward Nathan's recovery room. The sleeping investigator suddenly seemed much less like a patient and much more like a man who had nearly died uncovering something powerful. How long ago did this arrive? 23 minutes. Can we trace it? Samuel shook his head. Not yet. That answer frustrated him. She could see it. Men like Samuel Walker built careers on answers. Unanswered questions irritated them, especially when lives might depend on them. What now? Samuel thought for several seconds. Then he made a decision. We find the source. The answer surprised her. Tonight. Especially tonight. His gray eyes hardened. Whoever sent that message believes something is happening before sunrise. The logic was impossible to argue with. A warning carried urgency for a reason. Otherwise it would have waited. Samuel pressed a button on his radio. Ross, conference room C. 5 minutes. The reply came immediately. Understood. The radio fell silent. Samuel gestured toward the elevator. Come with me. Olivia followed. The hospital felt different now. Not because the building had changed. Because her perspective had. Every nurse walking the hallway. Every doctor crossing an intersection. Every administrator standing near a workstation. Any one of them could be the source. Or the threat. Or both. The realization was unsettling. They entered a private administrative conference room on the 4th floor. The room had clearly been claimed by federal investigators. 3 laptops sat open. Evidence boxes occupied one corner. Several printed diagrams covered the walls. Hospital organizational charts. Access logs. Names. Connections. Timelines. Olivia stopped when she saw one particular board. Her name appeared there. Olivia Carter. The sight made her stomach tighten. Lines extended from her name towards Sophie Mitchell. Stephen Harper. Richard Bennett. Patient safety reports. Suspension documentation. She had become part of the investigation. Without realizing it, Daniel Ross looked up from a laptop. Beside him sat another woman Olivia had never seen before. She appeared to be in her late 30s. Tall, lean, dark auburn hair gathered into a practical ponytail. Sharp green eyes. Freckles scattered lightly across pale skin. She wore no jewelry except a wedding band. Everything about her suggested efficiency. The woman stood. Agent Rachel Monroe. Her handshake was firm, direct, professional, not aggressive, not friendly. Rachel looked like someone who trusted evidence more than people. Years of investigative work had probably shaped that habit. We've been reviewing communication records. Rachel's voice carried the calm certainty of someone who preferred facts over speculation. Samuel nodded. Anything. Rachel turned her laptop. A series of messages appeared. Encrypted. Anonymous. Spread across months. Then years. The source had contacted investigators 27 times. Each message contained evidence. Documentation. Records. Warnings. Never a name. Never a location. Never enough information to expose themselves. Only evidence. Samuel studied the screen. Pattern. Rachel nodded. Actually, yes. That got everyone's attention. Rachel enlarged several entries. Every message arrives between midnight and 3 a.m. Interesting. Very interesting. Olivia immediately understood why. Night shift. Fewer administrators. Less supervision. More opportunity. Rachel continued. The Cinder consistently accesses internal records between 12:30 and 2:30. Daniel looked up. So they work nights. Most likely. The possibilities narrowed immediately. Not dozens of employees. Hundreds. But fewer. Much fewer. Samuel crossed his arms. Nurses. Rachel nodded slowly. Possibly. Maybe records management. Maybe laboratory. Anyone with system access. The investigation finally felt tangible. Not some invisible conspiracy. A person. An actual human being. Someone walking these hallways every night. Someone risking everything. Samuel looked toward Olivia. Who do you trust? The question caught her off guard. She thought carefully. Monica Reed immediately came to mind. Then several others. Most she eliminated just as quickly. Trust inside hospitals was complicated. People changed when careers became involved. Fear changed people too. Finally she answered. Very few. Samuel almost smiled. Good. That answer apparently matched his expectations. The conference room door opened suddenly. Everyone turned. A young nurse stood there. 26. Short blonde hair. Round glasses. Nervous expression. Olivia recognized her immediately. Emily Foster. A telemetry nurse. Quiet. Hardworking. Easy to overlook. Emily rarely spoke during meetings. Rarely attracted attention. The kind of employee administrators forgot existed. Which sometimes made people dangerous. Or useful. Emily looked frightened. Actually frightened. Agent Walker? Samuel stepped forward. Yes. Emily swallowed hard. I think someone is trying to access archived records. The room instantly became still. Samuel's voice lowered. What records? Emily looked toward Olivia. Then back to Samuel. The Sophie Mitchell file. Again. The same file. The same patient. The same evidence. Samuel grabbed his jacket. Show me. The group moved immediately. No discussion. No debate. Action. Within minutes, they entered the records department. The area occupied a quiet wing near administration. Most employees had gone home hours earlier. Only a few night shift workers remained. Computers glowed in darkened cubicles. Printers hummed softly. Everything appeared normal. Too normal. Rachel moved toward a workstation. Daniel checked another. Samuel spoke with security. Emily pointed toward a terminal near the rear office. That one. Rachel sat immediately, fingers moving rapidly across keys. Seconds passed. Then her expression changed. What? Samuel asked. Rachel pointed at the screen. Someone was here. Olivia stepped closer. Login records. Access attempts. Deleted queries. Archive searches. The activity had stopped only minutes earlier. The person had narrowly missed them. Samuel's jaw tightened. Can we identify the user? Rachel examined the logs. Then slowly nodded. Maybe. Everyone waited. Rachel opened another window. Cross-referenced credentials. Compared access patterns. Then finally stopped. The room seemed to hold its breath. Rachel looked up. Monica Reed. Silence. Complete silence. Olivia stared. No. The word escaped immediately. Not because Monica was incapable. Because it felt wrong. Rachel remained calm. It's her login. Olivia shook her head. That doesn't mean it's her. Samuel studied her. You trust her? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Because she did. Monica had protected her note. Monica had warned her. Monica had stood beside her when others remained silent. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Samuel apparently agreed. Could someone use her credentials? Rachel nodded. Easily, especially if they know her password. Olivia felt relief. Brief relief. Then another possibility appeared. What if Monica was the source? Not the criminal. The source. The person protecting evidence. The idea struck with unexpected force. It explained so much. Her access. Her experience. Her timing. Her willingness to preserve documentation. Samuel seemed to arrive at the same conclusion. Before either could speak, a security alarm suddenly sounded. A sharp electronic tone echoed through the records department. Everyone froze. Rachel looked toward her screen, eyes widening. What happened? Samuel demanded. Rachel's fingers moved rapidly. Then she looked up. They're deleting files. Every person in the room moved at once. Which files? Rachel turned pale. Everything connected to the investigation. The words hit like an explosion. Screens across the department began changing. Records disappearing. Directories emptying. Years of documentation under attack. Someone had realized investigators were closing in. Someone had decided to burn the evidence. Samuel grabbed his radio. Locked down records. Daniel sprinted toward the hallway. Security personnel immediately responded. But Olivia barely heard them, because one thought kept repeating inside her mind. The warning. Move before morning. The source had known. They had known something was coming. And now it was happening. Rachel fought to stop the deletion process. Lines of data flashed across screens. Some files recovered. Others vanished. The battle unfolding wasn't physical. It was digital. Yet the stakes felt just as deadly. Samuel stared at the monitors. His expression had become stone. Cold. Focused. Dangerous. The expression of a man who had finally found the battlefield. And somewhere inside Blue Ridge Regional Hospital, the person behind years of altered records had just made their first major mistake. Because for the first time, they were scared. The alarm continued echoing through the records department long after the first wave of panic had passed. Rachel Monroe sat in front of 3 monitors, her fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard while lines of code and database logs flashed across the screens. The calm, analytical confidence she normally carried had disappeared beneath intense concentration. She was no longer merely investigating evidence. She was fighting to save it. Around her, federal agents moved quickly through the records wing. Some secured workstations. Others photographed screens. 2 technicians connected portable drives to backup servers. Every second mattered. Every deleted file represented a patient, a nurse, a warning, a truth someone wanted erased. Samuel Walker stood behind Rachel, watching silently. His expression remained unreadable, but Olivia had begun recognizing the subtle signs that revealed his thoughts. The slight tightening around his eyes. The way his jaw shifted when he was angry. The complete stillness that appeared whenever he made important decisions. Right now he looked very still, which worried her. Rachel finally exhaled sharply. I stopped part of it. Part of it. Not all. Samuel immediately understood the implication. How much did we lose? Rachel reviewed another screen. Still calculating. Several long seconds passed. Then she looked up. Approximately 20%. The answer hit the room hard. 20%. Years of evidence. Years of records. Gone. Or at least partially gone. Olivia felt sick. Not because of numbers. Because she knew what those numbers represented. Patients. Families. Careers. Mistakes. Lives. Samuel looked toward one of the agents. Preserve everything remaining. The agent nodded and moved immediately. No wasted motion. No questions. The atmosphere felt less like a hospital investigation and more like a military operation. Perhaps there wasn't much difference. Both involved people. Both involved consequences. Both involved truth. The only difference was the battlefield. Rachel continued working. Then something on one screen caught her attention. Wait. The room immediately focused on her. What? Samuel asked. Rachel enlarged a section of logs. Her green eyes narrowed. This wasn't random. Olivia stepped closer. What do you mean? Rachel pointed towards several access records. Whoever initiated the deletion knew exactly where to look. That wasn't surprising. Then Rachel added. They also knew what to leave behind. That changed everything. Samuel moved closer. Explain. Rachel tapped several entries. The deleted records all share a common pattern. What pattern? She highlighted multiple files. Patient complaints. Safety concerns. Incident reports. Disciplinary reviews. Every file connected directly to administrative decision-making. Yet dozens of ordinary records remained untouched. Whoever launched the deletion hadn't panicked. They had selected targets. Carefully. Precisely. Professionally. Samuel nodded slowly. They understand the system. Very well. Rachel agreed. Possibly better than some administrators. The statement lingered in the air. Olivia immediately thought of Richard Bennett, then rejected the idea. Not because Bennett was innocent. Because this felt more sophisticated than him. Bennett benefited from the system. But someone else may have built it. Someone deeper. Someone smarter. Someone who understood hospital documentation from the inside. The realization made her uneasy. Because invisible enemies were always harder to fight. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Agent Walker? Everyone turned. A man stood near the entrance. Mid-40s. 6 feet tall. Lean build. Dark brown skin. Close-cropped black hair. A neatly trimmed beard. His posture suggested years of military discipline, though he wore civilian clothing. There was something cautious about him. Not fearful. Watchful. The kind of caution developed by people who spent years observing danger before speaking. Samuel immediately recognized him. Daniel. The man nodded. Olivia noticed something unusual. Samuel rarely showed emotion. Yet genuine relief appeared briefly on his face. The newcomer stepped into the room. His eyes swept across the investigators before settling on Olivia. Recognition appeared there. Not surprise. Recognition. Apparently Nathan wasn't the only person who knew who she was. Samuel gestured toward him. Olivia Carter, this is Daniel Brooks. The name meant nothing initially. Then memory stirred. Nathan had mentioned someone preserving information. Someone connected to documentation. Someone helping investigators. Daniel extended a hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. I've heard a lot about you. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Hopefully the good version. A faint smile appeared. Mostly. The humor felt refreshing after hours of tension. Daniel set a large black duffel bag on the conference table. The bag looked heavy. Very heavy. Samuel stared at it. What is that? Daniel unzipped it. The room became silent. Folders. Hundreds of pages. Photographs. Printed reports. Storage drives. Documentation. Years of documentation. Olivia felt her breath catch. The amount was staggering. Daniel looked almost embarrassed by the attention. I started keeping copies 18 months ago. 18 months. Not days. Not weeks. A year and a half. Samuel looked genuinely stunned. All of this. Daniel nodded. Not everything. Then he corrected himself. Just the things that didn't make sense. That answer told Olivia almost everything she needed to know about him. Daniel Brooks wasn't a crusader. He wasn't a whistleblower seeking attention. He was something more dangerous. A careful observer. The type of person who noticed patterns. The type who quietly collected facts. The type who kept going long after other people stopped paying attention. What made you start? Olivia asked. Daniel became silent. His expression changed. Pain surfaced briefly. Old pain. Important pain. Finally he answered. My wife. The room grew quiet. Daniel removed a photograph from one folder. A woman smiled back from the image. Late 30s. Warm brown eyes. Dark curly hair. A face full of kindness. The kind of smile that made people feel safer. Her name was Angela. Daniel's voice softened. She was a nurse here. Olivia listened carefully. She already suspected where the story might lead. Daniel continued. 3 years ago, she filed a patient safety complaint. No one interrupted. Nothing dramatic. Nothing political. Just a medication error she believed could hurt someone. Rachel stopped typing. Even Samuel seemed completely focused now. Daniel looked down at the photograph. 2 weeks later, she was written up. Olivia felt cold moving through her chest. Because she already knew the pattern. Daniel continued. Then another write-up. Then another. The pattern was familiar. Painfully familiar. A year later, she resigned. Silence followed. Daniel took a slow breath. She never worked in healthcare again. The room remained completely still. Not because anyone needed more details. Because everyone understood. The system had done its job. The complaint disappeared. The nurse disappeared. The problem disappeared. At least on paper. Daniel carefully returned the photograph to the folder. Angela died last year. The words landed heavily. Cancer. Heart disease. Accident. The cause didn't matter. The grief did. Daniel continued. Before she died, she asked me one question. His eyes lifted, looking directly at Samuel. Then Rachel. Then Olivia. She asked whether truth mattered if nobody protected it. The room became silent again. This time a different silence. Not investigative. Personal. Olivia thought about Caleb. About Sophie. About every patient who trusted strangers and scrubs. Daniel placed both hands on the table. That's when I started making copies. Samuel looked toward the folders. Years of evidence. Years of quiet resistance. Years of someone refusing to let the truth disappear. What exactly do you have? Daniel opened one folder. Then another. And another. Each revealed something disturbing. Patient records showing modifications. Incident reports rewritten weeks later. Safety complaints removed from final versions. Disciplinary actions targeting employees who raised concerns. The pattern repeated endlessly. Different names. Different dates. Same outcome. Olivia felt increasingly sick as she examined the documents. Because she recognized some of the names. Former nurses. Former staff. People she had worked beside. People who vanished suddenly. People everyone stopped talking about. Not because they forgot. Because remembering became uncomfortable. Rachel reviewed several pages. Then looked up sharply. This changes everything. Samuel nodded. How many cases? Daniel hesitated. Then answered. Documented. Over 200. Nobody spoke. 200. The number seemed impossible. Yet the evidence sat directly in front of them. 200 cases. 200 opportunities for truth to disappear. 200 reasons someone might want investigators gone. Olivia finally understood why Nathan had been shot. Not because of one patient. Not because of one report. Because of a system. A system large enough to protect itself. Dangerous enough to fight back. Daniel opened another folder. This one thinner. Different. More recent. His expression changed. Concern replacing confidence. Samuel immediately noticed. What is it? Daniel looked toward Olivia. Then back toward Samuel. There is something else. The room became quiet. Again. The kind of quiet that always preceded bad news. Daniel slid several pages across the table. Personnel reports. Human resources records. Administrative notes. Olivia recognized the name immediately. Her own. Samuel picked up the documents. His eyes narrowed. Rachel leaned closer. Daniel spoke softly. Someone started building a file on Olivia 6 months ago. The words seemed to drain warmth from the room. Olivia stared. What? Daniel nodded. Performance concerns. Behavior concerns. Professional conduct concerns. The language sounded familiar. Too familiar. Because it mirrored the accusations Bennett had used during her suspension. Samuel flipped through the pages. More notes. More documentation. More internal complaints. Most unsigned. Many unsupported. Some obviously exaggerated. Yet together they created a picture. A narrative. A target. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. Not because she was surprised. Because she finally understood. The suspension hadn't started with Sophie Mitchell. It had started months earlier. Someone had been preparing. Building a case. Waiting for the right opportunity. Daniel looked directly at her. Olivia. His voice carried genuine concern. Someone expected you to become a problem long before Sophie arrived. And for the first time since the investigation began, Olivia realized she might never have been an accident. She might have been selected. The conference room remained silent for several seconds after Daniel Brooks revealed the personnel file. No one moved. No one spoke. The stack of documents lay on the table between them like evidence recovered from a crime scene. Because that was exactly what it was. Olivia stared at the papers bearing her name. Performance concerns. Professional conduct issues. Communication problems. Recommendations for administrative review. Each report looked official. Legitimate. Reasonable. That was what made them dangerous. Bad lies were easy to identify. The most effective lies borrowed pieces of truth. Samuel slowly turned another page. Then another. His expression darkened with each document. Rachel Monroe moved beside him. The data analyst in her immediately recognized patterns. Not emotional patterns. Operational patterns. Manufactured patterns. The type created by people attempting to build a narrative over time. Finally, Samuel looked up. When was the first entry created? Daniel already knew the answer. 6 months ago. Olivia felt a chill. 6 months. Not after Sophie Mitchell. Not after her suspension. Long before either event. Long before she had any reason to believe anyone was paying attention to her. Rachel took one folder and began examining the metadata attached to several reports. After a few minutes she stopped. These weren't written by multiple people. Everyone looked toward her. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Rachel pointed at several pages. Different signatures. Different departments. Different supervisors. Then she tapped the screen. Same author profile. Samuel understood immediately. Olivia did not. Rachel explained. People leave fingerprints in writing. Word choices. Sentence structure. Formatting habits. The way they describe problems. Her finger moved across several paragraphs. The reports appear to come from different sources, but they were almost certainly written or heavily edited by the same person. The room grew quiet again. That changed everything. Instead of multiple complaints forming naturally over time, someone had actively built a case. Deliberately, patiently, carefully. Samuel leaned back in his chair. Someone wanted Olivia removed. The sentence sounded simple. Its implications were not. Olivia crossed her arms. Why? No one answered immediately. Because they didn't know. Not yet. But Samuel's eyes suggested he was already considering possibilities. Rachel broke the silence. When did you first start asking questions? Olivia thought carefully. There had been dozens of incidents. Hundreds. Most seemed insignificant at the time. Then one memory surfaced. About 7 months earlier. A patient named Walter Jennings. 73 years old. Retired school principal. Heart failure. Kind eyes. Kind voice. The type of man who apologized when nurses brought him medication because he worried about inconveniencing people. Olivia remembered him clearly. She told the story. As she spoke, Daniel listened carefully. Walter had suffered a medication complication. Not catastrophic. Not fatal. But serious. Olivia documented concerns about the timeline. Several details failed to match the official report. At the time, she assumed it was an administrative mistake. Nothing more. Rachel immediately looked interested. What happened afterward? Olivia frowned. I received my first formal warning 2 weeks later. The room became still. Samuel and Rachel exchanged a glance. One of those silent, investigative conversations that required no words. Daniel opened another folder. His eyes scanned several pages. Then he stopped. Slowly, he pulled out a document. Walter Jennings. Olivia stared. The name appeared clearly at the top. The same patient. The same incident. The same timeline. Except this version contained details she had never seen before. Details removed from the official record. Her stomach tightened. Where did you get that? Daniel looked grim. Angela copied it. His late wife. The nurse who had started noticing problems years earlier. Olivia examined the report. Someone had altered medication administration times. Not dramatically. Only enough to reduce liability. Only enough to protect certain decisions. Only enough to hide responsibility. Exactly the type of modification Nathan had been investigating. Samuel took the report, then placed it beside Olivia's personnel file. The dates aligned almost perfectly. Walter Jennings. Question raised. Documentation created. Personnel file begins. The pattern became obvious. Too obvious. Samuel spoke quietly. That's why. Olivia looked at him. You became visible. The answer settled heavily inside her. For years she had assumed she was simply difficult to management. Too persistent. Too willing to ask questions. Now a different possibility emerged. Someone identified her as a risk. Someone began preparing long before Sophie Mitchell entered the hospital. The realization made her feel exposed. Like discovering strangers had been discussing her life in rooms she never entered. A knock interrupted the conversation. The conference room door opened. Monica Reed stepped inside. For a moment, nobody spoke. The timing felt almost unreal, especially considering her credentials had just appeared inside a suspicious access log. Monica looked exhausted. The events of the past 48 hours had carved new lines into her face. Her braid had partially loosened. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Yet she still carried herself with the same stubborn dignity Olivia had always admired. Monica immediately sensed tension. Her gaze moved around the room. Samuel, Rachel, Daniel, Olivia, the folders, the evidence, the expressions. What happened? Samuel stood. His posture remained calm, non-threatening, which somehow made him more intimidating. We need to ask you a few questions. Monica raised an eyebrow. That sounds encouraging. Despite the tension, Olivia nearly smiled. Monica possessed a dry humor that survived almost everything. Samuel gestured toward a chair. Monica sat. Not nervously, not defensively, confidently. People who carried secrets often appeared uncomfortable during interviews. Monica looked irritated instead. Rachel opened her laptop. Your credentials accessed archived records tonight. Monica didn't appear surprised. I know. That answer caught everyone off guard. Samuel leaned forward. You know? Yes. Monica crossed her arms. Because I was the one accessing them. Silence. Complete silence. Olivia stared. Daniel stared. Even Rachel seemed momentarily surprised. Samuel remained still. What records? Sophie Mitchell. Monica answered immediately. No hesitation. No evasion. Nothing. The confidence felt genuine. Rachel looked toward the access logs. Why? Monica's expression hardened. Because she knew exactly why. Because I knew someone would try changing them. The room became very quiet. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. Monica continued. I made copies. Daniel slowly sat back. Understanding appeared across his face. Samuel remained focused. You expected alterations. Monica laughed once. A humorless sound. I've worked here 15 years. That answer explained more than any detailed report. 15 years. Long enough to recognize patterns. Long enough to see people punished. Long enough to know how evidence disappeared. Samuel asked the next question carefully. Are you the source? Monica's eyes narrowed. For the first time, she looked genuinely concerned. Not for herself. For something else. Something larger. No. The answer arrived instantly. Too quickly to be fabricated. Samuel studied her. Olivia knew that look. He was searching for deception. Monica met his gaze without blinking. Eventually, Samuel nodded slightly. Apparently satisfied. At least for now. Monica looked toward Olivia. Then toward the personnel file. Recognition flashed across her face. Followed by anger. Real anger. Not surprise. Not confusion. Anger. They finally showed you. Olivia felt cold move through her chest. Showed me what? Monica stared at the documents. The list. The room became silent. Samuel immediately noticed. What list? Monica looked around the room, realizing she had revealed something unintentionally. For several seconds, she debated whether to continue. Then she made a decision. I thought it was a rumor. Nobody interrupted. Monica continued. Several years ago, one of the supervisors mentioned it. Her voice lowered. A list of employees considered problematic. Olivia felt physically ill. Monica continued. People who asked questions. People who documented concerns. People who refused to stay quiet. Rachel stopped typing. Daniel looked horrified. Samuel's eyes hardened further. Monica pointed toward Olivia's file. Looks like you were on it. The room fell silent again. Not because anyone doubted her. Because everyone believed her. And if such a list existed, then the investigation was no longer about altered medical records alone. It was about identifying people before they became threats. Tracking them. Documenting them. Removing them. The way organizations sometimes remove diseases. Before symptoms spread. Monica slowly exhaled. Then looked directly at Samuel. You think this investigation is bigger than a hospital? Samuel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because everyone in the room already knew the truth. The investigation had just become much bigger than anyone expected. Nobody spoke for several moments after Monica Reed mentioned the list. The conference room seemed smaller now. The walls closer. The evidence heavier. Olivia sat motionless, staring at the personnel file spread across the table. For years, she had assumed her struggles were individual battles. A disagreement here. A complaint there. A difficult supervisor. A frustrated administrator. The ordinary politics of a hospital. Now a different picture emerged. Something deliberate. Something organized. Something far more dangerous. Samuel Walker finally broke the silence. Tell me everything you know. Monica leaned back in her chair. Exhaustion showed clearly on her face now. 15 years of night shifts had taught her endurance, but the last 48 hours had taken a visible toll. She rubbed her temples before speaking. It started years ago, at least as far back as 8 years. Rachel Monroe immediately began taking notes. Monica continued. Nobody talked about it openly. Nobody ever saw an official document. But every supervisor knew. Olivia listened carefully. The room remained completely focused on Monica. Employees who created problems were monitored. Samuel narrowed his eyes. What kind of problems? Monica laughed bitterly. The wrong kind. That answer told everyone exactly what she meant. Questions. Concerns. Documentation. Accountability. The things hospitals claimed to value. Until they became inconvenient. Monica folded her arms. I saw nurses written up after reporting medication issues. I saw respiratory therapists transferred after raising safety concerns. I saw physicians lose privileges after refusing to alter reports. The room grew increasingly quiet, not because the information was shocking, because it matched everything investigators had already discovered. Monica looked toward Olivia, then toward Daniel Brooks, then back to Samuel. Most people learned the lesson. What lesson? Monica's expression hardened. Keep your head down. The words landed heavily. Because fear worked. Fear always worked. That was why organizations used it. Daniel opened another folder. One of Angela's, his late wife's. The pages inside contained names, dates, incident numbers, dozens of entries. As Rachel compared them against federal records, a disturbing pattern emerged. The same employees appeared repeatedly, not because they performed poorly, because they spoke up repeatedly. Samuel studied the pages, then suddenly stopped. His eyes narrowed. What is this? He pulled out a separate report. Different formatting, different classification. Daniel looked surprised. I haven't seen that one. Rachel examined the document, then slowly looked up. It isn't a patient file. Olivia moved closer. The title sat clearly at the top. Risk Assessment Review. The words seemed harmless, until they read the contents. Employee names, departments, ratings, comments, recommendations. The list. An actual list. Not rumor. Not speculation. Real. Documented. Existing. Olivia felt physically sick. Her own name appeared halfway down page 3. Employee, Olivia Carter. Risk classification, elevated. Reason, documentation-focused behavior. Repeated challenges to physician authority. Potential reporting risk. Recommended action, monitor interactions. Increase supervisory review. For several seconds nobody spoke. Even Samuel seemed genuinely disturbed. Rachel looked toward Olivia. I'm sorry. The apology surprised her. Not because it was necessary, because it was sincere. Samuel slowly turned another page. Then another. The list continued. 32 names. Most current. Some former. Several marked inactive. Daniel stared. My God. Monica looked equally stunned. I never thought it actually existed. But it did. The evidence sat directly in front of them. Years of targeting. Years of monitoring. Years of identifying potential threats before those threats became public problems. The system wasn't reacting. It was preparing. That realization changed everything. A knock interrupted the moment. The door opened. An agent entered quickly. Mid-30s. Athletic build. Serious expression. Olivia recognized him from earlier. Agent Daniel Ross. His face suggested urgency. Walker. Samuel immediately stood. What happened? Ross handed him a tablet. We finished cross-referencing the archive copies. Samuel reviewed the screen. Then his expression changed. Not surprise. Anger. Controlled anger. The dangerous kind. What is it? Rachel asked. Samuel turned the tablet toward them. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Rows. Columns. Names. Dates. Hundreds of entries. Rachel's eyes widened. How many? Ross answered. 231. The room fell silent. Again. Because the number seemed impossible. Yet there it was. Verified. Documented. Confirmed. 231 altered patient records. Not suspicious records. Not possible records. Confirmed records. Samuel spoke quietly. Those are only the cases we can prove. That made it worse. Much worse. Because if investigators could prove 231 cases already, the real number might be significantly higher. Olivia thought about all the patients who trusted the hospital, all the families, all the nurses, all the staff who believed documentation meant truth. How many stories had been rewritten? How many warnings erased? How many careers destroyed? The questions seemed endless. Ross continued. We found another pattern. Nobody liked the sound of that. What pattern? Rachel asked. Ross enlarged a section of data. Administrative approvals. Authorization chains. Record modifications. Every path eventually led toward the same office. The same department. The same individual. Richard Bennett. The room became very quiet. Monica closed her eyes briefly. Not surprise. Disappointment. Deep disappointment. The kind people felt when suspicion finally became certainty. Samuel studied the information. How direct is the connection? Ross answered immediately. Very. There are over 400 authorization references linked to Bennett's credentials. Rachel nodded. Too many to explain away. Exactly. One or two incidents might be coincidence. 400 was a system. Samuel looked toward the conference room window. Dawn remained several hours away. The hospital slept. Or pretended to. Somewhere inside the building, Richard Bennett likely believed he still controlled the narrative. The thought seemed to amuse Samuel slightly. The expression vanished almost immediately. Then he made a decision. Everyone felt it. The atmosphere changed. Ross noticed. Rachel noticed. Monica noticed. Olivia noticed. Samuel Walker had stopped investigating. Now he was preparing to act. When does Bennett arrive? Monica answered. Usually 6:30. Samuel checked his watch. Just after 3. 3.5 hours. Rachel immediately understood. You want him here. Samuel nodded. I want him comfortable. Ross smiled faintly. Not because anything was funny. Because he understood the strategy. People revealed more when they believed they remained in control. Samuel looked around the room. At the evidence. The files. The names. The years of manipulation. The careers damaged. The patients affected. Then his gaze settled briefly on Olivia. You were right about Sophie. The statement surprised her. Samuel continued. And because you documented it, we found the thread. Olivia thought about that. One note. One report. One refusal to stay silent. Nothing heroic. Nothing dramatic. Yet somehow it had exposed a path leading into years of hidden misconduct. Monica looked toward her. So did Angela. Daniel nodded. Quietly. His eyes moved to the photograph of his late wife sitting beside the evidence folders. For a moment nobody spoke. The room carried too much history. Too much loss. Too many people who had tried to tell the truth. Finally Samuel broke the silence. Get some rest if you can. No one laughed. Because nobody could. There would be no real rest tonight. Not anymore. The investigation had crossed a line. Dawn had not yet reached Lexington when Nathan Walker woke again. The hospital remained suspended in that strange hour between night and morning, when exhausted nurses counted medication trays beneath fluorescent lights, and cleaning crews moved silently through hallways that would soon fill with visitors, physicians, and administrators pretending another ordinary day had begun. Nothing about this day would be ordinary. Rain tapped softly against the windows overlooking the eastern parking lot. Inside Conference Room C, federal investigators had transformed a forgotten administrative meeting space into the center of a growing storm. Coffee cups covered tables. Evidence boxes lined the walls. Screens glowed with spreadsheets, access logs, personnel records, and patient files. And in the center of it all sat the encrypted drive Nathan Walker had nearly died protecting. Rachel Monroe stared at the screen before her. For nearly 4 hours, she had worked alongside 2 federal cyber analysts attempting to break through multiple layers of security. The analysts were both new faces to Olivia. The first was Aaron Pierce, a 38-year-old digital forensics specialist with thinning blonde hair, narrow shoulders, and permanently tired eyes that suggested he spent more time staring at computer screens than sunlight. Aaron rarely spoke unless necessary. Years of investigating financial crimes and cyber fraud had trained him to trust data more than people. Beside him sat Priya Shah, a 41-year-old cybersecurity expert whose calm confidence immediately stood out. She was petite, with dark skin, intelligent brown eyes, and long black hair tied into a practical braid. Priya possessed the unusual ability to remain emotionally detached while examining evidence, a skill she developed after years investigating healthcare fraud networks across multiple states. Rachel rubbed her eyes. Aaron leaned closer to the monitor, then suddenly froze. Wait. The room immediately focused on him. Samuel Walker looked up from a stack of reports. What is it? Aaron's fingers moved across the keyboard. Lines of encrypted code disappeared. A folder opened. Then another. Silence filled the room. The drive had finally unlocked. Nobody celebrated. Experienced investigators knew better. Sometimes opening the door was the easy part. What waited behind it was often far worse. Rachel began reviewing the contents. Within seconds, her expression changed. Then changed again. By the third folder, even Samuel stood up. Olivia watched the investigators carefully. She had spent years reading body language in emergency rooms. Fear, shock, relief, grief. This was something different. Professional disbelief. The reaction people displayed when evidence exceeded expectations. Rachel opened another directory. Patient files appeared. Hundreds of them. Not hospital copies. Original copies. Untouched copies. Files preserved before alterations occurred, before reports changed, before timelines shifted. The truth, preserved exactly as it happened. "My God," Rachel whispered. The words escaped before she could stop them. Samuel moved behind her. The room remained silent except for the hum of computers. Aaron began counting. 100 files. Then 200. Then more. Eventually he stopped. 247. Nobody spoke. 247 original patient files. The number seemed impossible. Yet there they were. Every file represented a patient. Every patient represented a story. Every story represented someone whose truth had been rewritten. Olivia felt sick. Not because of the number, because of what the number revealed. This wasn't corruption. Not anymore. Corruption implied occasional wrongdoing. This was infrastructure. A system. Something built deliberately and maintained over years. Samuel stared at the screen. "Can we verify authenticity?" Priya nodded immediately. "Already started." She opened several comparison windows. Original records appeared beside official hospital versions. Differences became obvious immediately. Medication times changed. Symptoms removed. Physician notes altered. Nursing concerns shortened. Critical warnings deleted entirely. The pattern repeated endlessly. One file after another. One patient after another. One lie after another. Daniel Brooks sat quietly at the far end of the room. The folders Angela had preserved rested beside him. As more evidence appeared, his eyes drifted toward a photograph of his late wife. For several seconds, he simply stared at it. Olivia understood. Angela had been right all along. The knowledge brought no comfort. Only vindication mixed with grief. Sometimes justice arrived too late to help the people who needed it most. Rachel opened another file, then stopped. "Everyone needs to see this." Samuel approached. Olivia followed. The patient file belonged to Walter Jennings, the retired school principal, the same man whose case had started Olivia's unofficial targeting 6 months earlier. Two versions appeared side by side. Official record. Original record. The differences were devastating. The original documentation clearly showed a medication timing error. Not malicious. Not intentional. But real. The altered version removed responsibility entirely. Several entries had been rewritten. Entire observations vanished. The official record transformed a preventable complication into an unavoidable event. Olivia stared. The evidence felt personal now. She remembered Walter. His kindness. His patience. His trust. The truth of his case had been stolen, just like hundreds of others. Samuel looked toward Aaron. "How many administrative approvals are connected?" Aaron typed rapidly. Results appeared seconds later. 472. The room became silent again. 472 approvals. 472 opportunities to stop the process. 472 decisions. Every road led back toward administration. Every path narrowed. Every explanation became weaker. Richard Bennett's world was shrinking rapidly. A knock interrupted the moment. Agent Daniel Ross entered. His expression immediately told Samuel something. "What happened?" Ross handed him a tablet. "Hospital administration just arrived." The timing wasn't surprising. It was nearly 6:30. Staff were beginning to report for duty. The difference was that today federal investigators were waiting. Samuel glanced toward the screen, then smiled for the first time all night. Not a happy smile. A dangerous one. The show is starting. Olivia followed him toward the conference room window. The administrative parking area sat below. A black luxury sedan had just arrived. Richard Bennett stepped out. Perfect suit. Perfect tie. Perfect posture. Everything about him projected control, confidence, authority, the image of a successful hospital executive. He had no idea his world had already changed. Samuel folded his arms. He still thinks he's managing damage. Rachel joined them. He's about 6 hours behind reality. Samuel nodded. Good. Down below, Bennett entered the hospital. 2 assistant administrators followed behind him. Olivia recognized one of them immediately. Patricia Lowell, the Human Resources Director. Patricia looked exactly as she always did. Neat gray hair, small glasses, professional expression. Yet even from this distance Olivia noticed something different. Nervousness. Subtle, barely visible, but present. The administration knew something was wrong. They simply didn't know how much investigators already possessed. Samuel turned toward Ross. Bring him up. Ross nodded. What if he refuses? Samuel's expression remained calm. He won't. The certainty sounded absolute. And Olivia believed him. Because people like Bennett relied on influence, connections, status. They rarely prepared for moments when none of those things mattered. An hour later, Richard Bennett entered conference room C. The transformation was fascinating. Not because he appeared frightened. Because he didn't. Not initially. He walked into the room carrying the same confidence he brought into board meetings and public events. The confidence of a man accustomed to controlling conversations. His eyes moved across the investigators, then stopped. Olivia. The confidence cracked. Only briefly. But Olivia saw it. Bennett had expected federal investigators. He had not expected her. The suspended nurse. The problem employee. The woman whose career he thought he had already solved. Ms. Carter. His voice remained smooth. Practiced. Professional. Olivia said nothing. Samuel gestured toward a chair. Sit down. Bennett complied. Not because he wanted to. Because refusing would look worse. Patricia Lowell sat beside him. The human resources director appeared far less comfortable. Her hands remained tightly clasped. Her smile had disappeared entirely. Samuel opened a folder. One of hundreds. We have some questions. Bennett nodded. Of course. The performance began immediately. Cooperative executive. Concerned administrator. Helpful witness. Olivia almost admired the skill. Almost. Samuel placed 2 files on the table. Walter Jennings. Sophie Mitchell. Bennett's eyes flickered. Tiny movement. Yet enough. Samuel noticed. Rachel noticed. Olivia noticed. The investigators already knew where to look. Samuel spoke calmly. Would you explain the discrepancies? Bennett glanced at the documents. Then smiled. Documentation errors occur in every hospital. There it was. The first defense. Minimize. Normalize. Redirect. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. Then placed another folder down. Then another. Then another. The stack continued growing. 5, 10, 20, 30. By the time he stopped, Bennett's expression had changed. Not panic. Not yet. But concern. Real concern. Samuel finally spoke. Do documentation errors occur 247 times? The room became silent. Patricia Lowell visibly paled. Bennett stared at the folders. Then at Samuel. Then at Olivia. For the first time since entering the room, he looked uncertain. Just uncertain. Nothing more. But uncertainty had appeared. And once it appeared, it tended to grow. Samuel opened one final folder. A familiar folder. Olivia's personnel file. The file built against her over 6 months. The file designed to remove her. Bennett recognized it instantly. The reaction lasted less than a second. Yet it was enough. Rachel documented it immediately. Samuel leaned forward. We know about the list. The color drained from Patricia Lowell's face. Richard Bennett didn't answer. For the first time all morning, he couldn't. For several seconds after Samuel Walker said the words, nobody moved. We know about the list. The conference room seemed frozen in place. Richard Bennett sat perfectly still. Patricia Lowell looked as though all the air had been pulled from the room. Olivia watched carefully. For months, she had wondered whether she was imagining things. Whether she had simply become difficult. Whether speaking up had made her overly sensitive. Now she sat across from the people who had quietly built a case against her. And for the first time, they could not explain it away. Samuel slid several documents across the table. Personnel evaluations. Internal communications. Monitoring recommendations. The list. The real list. Not rumor. Not speculation. Evidence. Patricia stared at the pages. Her hands trembled slightly. Richard Bennett remained silent. Samuel's voice stayed calm. Would either of you like to explain why nurses reporting safety concerns were classified as elevated risks? Neither answered. Rachel Monroe opened another file. Then another. The evidence continued growing. Each document reinforced the same conclusion. The system existed. The targeting existed. The retaliation existed. And now investigators possessed proof. Patricia finally broke. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Simply visibly. Years of pressure seemed to collapse inward all at once. She removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes, then whispered something barely audible. We never thought it would go this far. The room became silent. Samuel leaned forward. What exactly didn't you think would go this far? Patricia looked at Bennett. For a moment, Olivia almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Patricia wasn't evil. She wasn't the architect. She was something far more common. Someone who saw wrong things happen and convinced herself there was a reason. Someone who traded courage for comfort one compromise at a time. Eventually she spoke. It started small. Bennett immediately turned toward her. Patricia. The warning in his voice was unmistakable. Patricia ignored it, for perhaps the first time in years. The hospital had several expensive lawsuits. Her eyes remained fixed on the table. Insurance costs increased. Board members became concerned. Samuel listened carefully. No interruptions. No judgment. Patricia continued. Then reports started disappearing. The confession landed heavily. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. Patricia kept speaking, almost as if stopping would be impossible. At first it was only wording. Small changes. Clarifications. Administrative corrections. The language sounded familiar. Because every organization used harmless words to describe harmful actions. Patricia looked up. Tears had appeared in her eyes. Not dramatic tears. The quiet kind produced by regret. Then it became easier. No one spoke. Because everyone understood. Wrong decisions rarely arrived fully formed. They arrived one compromise at a time. Patricia pointed toward Bennett. He said we were protecting the hospital. Richard Bennett's face hardened. Be careful. The threat sounded weak now. Patricia actually laughed. A tired laugh. A defeated laugh. I've been careful for 8 years. The room became completely silent. Because everyone knew what she meant. 8 years. 8 years of watching. 8 years of justifying. 8 years of silence. And now the silence was over. Bennett stood abruptly. This is absurd. The polished executive finally cracked. Not much. Just enough. Samuel remained seated. Unmoved. What part is absurd? The assumptions. Bennett pointed toward the evidence. You're creating conclusions. Rachel slid a hard drive onto the table. The original records disagree. Bennett stopped talking. Rachel opened one folder. Then another. Then another. Original patient files. Original nursing notes. Original timelines. The drive Nathan Walker nearly died protecting. The room filled with evidence. Document after document. Case after case. Year after year. The truth was overwhelming. Even Bennett could see it. Samuel spoke quietly. Nathan risked his life retrieving these. The mention of Nathan changed something. Bennett's eyes flickered. A tiny reaction. Almost invisible. Samuel noticed immediately. So did Rachel. The investigators exchanged a glance. There. Something important. Samuel leaned forward. You knew he was investigating. Not a question. A statement. Bennett didn't answer. Which was answer enough. Ross entered the room before anyone could continue. The agent moved quickly, purposefully. His expression carried urgency. Walker. Samuel stood. What happened? Ross handed him a tablet. 3 employees just requested legal representation. Rachel immediately understood. The news is spreading. Ross nodded. It already has. The wall-protecting administration was beginning to collapse. People who stayed silent for years were suddenly speaking. Because silence only worked while people believed nobody would listen. Now investigators were listening. The effect spread rapidly. Within 2 hours, the conference room became a revolving door of witnesses. Nurses, technicians, supervisors, former employees, people Olivia recognized, people she barely remembered, all carrying pieces of the same story. A respiratory therapist described altered equipment reports. A pharmacist described medication discrepancies. A former quality control coordinator described pressure from administration to change documentation. One witness after another. One truth after another. By noon, the evidence had become impossible to ignore. Blue Ridge Regional Hospital wasn't facing a misunderstanding. It was facing exposure. Nathan Walker arrived shortly after 1 o'clock. Against medical advice. Against common sense. Against nearly everyone's recommendation. Including Dr. Rebecca Lawson's. He walked slowly. His movements remained stiff from surgery. But determination carried him forward. When Nathan entered the conference room, silence followed him. Not because of authority. Because everyone knew what he had sacrificed. Nathan looked directly at Richard Bennett. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Nathan sat across from him. You should have let the records speak for themselves. Bennett said nothing. Nathan continued. People trusted you. The words hit harder than accusations. Because they were true. Hospitals depended on trust. Patients arrived vulnerable. Families arrived frightened. Trust was the foundation beneath everything. Nathan's voice remained calm. You protected a reputation instead. The room stayed silent. Bennett finally looked away. The first sign of defeat. Hours later, federal officials formally secured administrative records. Computers were seized, accounts frozen, evidence preserved. The investigation moved beyond the hospital. State authorities became involved. Licensing boards became involved. Insurance investigators became involved. The story could no longer be contained. For Olivia, however, the most important moment arrived 3 days later. Not in a courtroom, not in a conference room, not in front of investigators. In a hospital room, Sophie Mitchell sat upright in bed, holding a stuffed rabbit. Color had returned to her face. The fever was gone. The danger had passed. She looked like a child again, exactly as she should. Elaine Mitchell stood beside the bed. The older woman's eyes filled with tears the moment Olivia entered. Without warning, Elaine embraced her. Tightly, fiercely, the kind of embrace people gave when words were insufficient. "You saved my granddaughter." Olivia swallowed hard. "No." She glanced toward Sophie. "The ICU team saved her." Elaine shook her head. "You spoke up." The simple statement carried enormous weight. Because it was true. Sometimes the person who saves a life is the person who refuses to stay silent. Sophie smiled shyly, then held up the stuffed rabbit. "My rabbit likes you." Olivia laughed. A real laugh. The first in days. "I like your rabbit too." The moment stayed with her long after she left the room. Weeks passed. The investigation expanded. More evidence emerged. More witnesses came forward. Richard Bennett resigned before formal termination proceedings could begin. Multiple administrators lost their positions. Several licensing reviews followed. The system that once appeared untouchable continued collapsing under its own weight. Then one afternoon, Olivia received a phone call. She recognized Samuel Walker's voice immediately. "Busy. Depends." A faint chuckle. "We have a proposal." Olivia sat down. "What kind of proposal?" "The hospital board voted this morning." That surprised her. The board had been unusually quiet throughout the investigation. Samuel continued. "Blue Ridge Regional needs a new emergency department director." Olivia stared out the window, speechless. For a moment, she thought she misunderstood. "You can't be serious." "We are." She laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because life occasionally possessed a strange sense of irony. Weeks earlier, security escorted her out of the building. Now they wanted her back. Samuel's voice softened. "People trust you." The statement reminded her of Nathan, of Sophie, of Angela Brooks, of Monica Reed, of everyone who risked something by telling the truth. Olivia remained quiet for several moments, then finally smiled. A small smile, but genuine. Maybe systems could change. Maybe not all at once. Maybe not perfectly. But sometimes change began with one person refusing to accept a lie. Months later, Olivia stood inside the newly renovated emergency department. The noise felt familiar. Monitors beeped. Nurses moved between rooms. Patients arrived needing help. Life continued. Above her office desk sat a framed photograph. Not of awards. Not of recognition. A simple picture of Sophie Mitchell holding her stuffed rabbit. Beside it sat a small handwritten note. "Thank you for believing me." Olivia looked at the note often. Not because she needed gratitude. Because she needed the reminder. Truth rarely wins quickly. Courage rarely feels comfortable. And doing the right thing rarely comes without cost. But sometimes one honest voice can expose a lie. Sometimes one nurse can challenge a system. Sometimes one decision can change hundreds of lives. And sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is refuse to stay silent when everyone else asks them to look away. That was the lesson Olivia carried forward. Not that she had defeated a system, but that truth never truly disappears. Someone remembers. Someone preserves it. Someone speaks. And eventually, no matter how deeply it is buried, the truth finds its way back into the light. Sometimes God's greatest miracles do not arrive with thunder from heaven or signs written across the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly through ordinary people who choose truth when silence would be easier, courage when fear would be safer, and compassion when others decide to look away. Olivia Carter never set out to expose corruption, challenge powerful leaders, or become part of a federal investigation. She simply refused to ignore what she knew was wrong. One nurse wrote down the truth. One nurse spoke up for a little girl who could not speak for herself. One nurse chose integrity over comfort. And through that single decision, hidden lies were uncovered. Innocent people found their voices again, patients were protected, and an entire system built on fear began to crumble. That is often how God works in our lives. He does not always choose the most powerful people in the room. He does not always work through those with titles, influence, or authority. Sometimes he works through ordinary men and women who are willing to do the right thing when nobody else will. A simple act of honesty can change a life. One courageous decision can protect a family. One voice speaking the truth can inspire countless others to stand up and do the same. Most of us will never uncover a hospital scandal or become part of a federal investigation. But every day we face choices that matter. We choose whether to tell the truth when it is uncomfortable. We choose whether to help someone who is struggling. We choose whether to stand firm when doing the right thing comes with a cost. Those moments may seem small, but God often uses small acts of faithfulness to accomplish things far greater than we can imagine. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to share it with someone who may need encouragement today. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And let us know if you've ever seen one person make a difference simply by refusing to stay silent. And if you enjoy stories of faith, hope, courage, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, be sure to subscribe and join our community. May God bless you and your family with peace in difficult times, strength when challenges come, wisdom to recognize the truth, and courage to stand for what is right. May His protection watch over your home, His grace guide your path, and His love remind you every day that even the smallest act of kindness can become part of a miracle. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Red Heart Folded Hands.